Uh, good um, good evening. So today is May 5th, 2026, Cinco de Mayo, and it's early in the morning. It's about 1 a.m. U.S. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this from my office at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this is located 300 feet away from the house of Mr. Robert Mueller, who is the former director of the FBI, and that is relevant to this conversation. So this session is demo or declaration. Actually, this will be more like a demo. 135, and this is. I mean, yeah, initially I thought it was going to be a segment at the end of 134, but it makes sense to like separate them. Because a few things that information I got and things that I can derive from that. So I'm gonna make this a purely technical session. Okay. Now I have to tell you, in this session, I would like to go into deep details of things like information retrieval. Um, so I'm gonna probably go a little bit deeper than usual on the technical things, right? And I'm gonna be careful to try not to lose you on the process. Um, because these are very technical topics, right? I know that not everybody will have context to understand these things, because they would need training to understand what I'm saying. But I think that this is such an important thing, the topic or thing that I discovered that I need to say, right? So I'm gonna risk losing part of the audience in a way, right? For that part. Um, in exchange for giving the authorities tools to understand the scale of what they're doing. Um, so that's what I'm gonna do. Okay. So, but I have to tell you, when I get into that part, I don't prepare what I say, right? Like as I mentioned before, I never script my demos. So I don't have anything prepared, and I will have to because I want to show you visually more or less what it looks like. So I'll do it in a document live in front of you. So it's gonna be a bit messy, right? And a bit, it's not gonna look very organized. And I apologize for that in advance. But if you can, be flexible on your side, and try to bear with me for a second. Um, I think it's important that I show you this thing and um, how these things work, right? You'll see what I mean when I get there. But let's start with, let me share my screen with you. Yes. Mm, I think it's this one. Sorry, made a mistake. Okay. So this is the one, and this is the talking points. Yes. So the first thing is the Lambo tip. Okay. So this is. I think this is actually I'm going to change the order of this. I'm going to start with the ablation experiment. No, I'm torn about this. No, let's start with the Lambo tip because that's more high level. So the Lambo tip. Okay. This thing I'm going to say, to be honest with you, I've been on the fence on whether to say it or not for a few days. I don't know, 2 days. And I've been thinking about this a lot. Like sometimes I'm usually pretty transparent. Like when I see that it's something that needs to be said, I say it, right? But there are instances in which there has been a few instances in which I have to think about it, right? Because of the implications, or because if I say it or not say it, it could pose danger to me, for example, or to other people, like things like that. It's been a few occasions, and this is one of those occasions. Uh, you know, let's not talk about the reasons for not saying it, right? But I wanted to tell you that I've been thinking about whether to say this or not, and I decided that I'm going to say it, right? But so I'm going to say that because of two reasons. Because one, because I think if authorities hear this, they will gain quickly an understanding of the scale and the sophistication of what this Preco enterprise is doing, and also they will gain an understanding quickly on who they have to talk to at Google to, reverse engineer what they're doing, and therefore, after that, getting all of them right. So those are basically my that's basically why I think it's a good idea to say it this way. So this is what happened. This is about. I mean, the starting point of all this is again the same character who we talked about before. His name is Rodolfo Vargas. Right? Now that we're here, I'm going to show you because in the previous segment I mentioned him, but yeah, this one, PHP Agency. So this is the website, right? So this is Roberto Vargas. This is who I think is, so. The informant told me that this is the uncle of Sebastian, but he didn't tell me if it was the brother of Andres Mendez or Andres Salvador Mendez or Andres Antonio Mendez. He has different, or Speedy Gonzalez. He has different aliases, right? Um, Multiple identities, right? So he could be the brother of him, or he could be the brother of Zuleima Molero Villamizar, um, formerly known as Gloria Spin, or the petitioner on that 387 court case. And this is the infomercial that I that I mentioned in the previous segment. Right, that it's on YouTube, and you can click on it, and he basically talks. I mean, I'm going to show you the entire thing, but he basically it's an information about him and his yellow Lamborghini. Um, and this, I mean, I'm not saying this to make fun of the information, but this is relevant to what I want to tell you. And if you advance on the video, basically the information is about him and how successful he is as an immigrant, right? And how he defeated all the challenges of being an immigrant and became a millionaire in the U.S. That's basically what the information is about. And at some point in the infomercial, he takes there's a shot with him and his Lamborghini, and the fatal mistake was that the plate of the Lamborghini is visible in the video, right? Which allowed me to see it and check in my system, and yes, it's him, right? He's the person that's been following me for years, and that's probably how the Lamborghini was acquired. You can see the plate there, right? So anyhow, but remember, I found his house using technology that I developed on top of the geo index of the database of Diosdado Cabello that was leaked to me precisely by these people in 2024. I say precisely because what happened, and I described this in a demo that it's an hour long, and I'm going to repeat all that. But what happened was that because they were harassing me using this technology platform that is based on this database, I'm an engineer and I can see what they're doing. So I found a way to understand where was the database stored, and I downloaded the database. But this was only possible because of the amount of harassment they applied to me using that system. Of course, this person, Rodolfo Vargas, that's not his real name, right? But this entity, he doesn't understand how the system works. He's an user of the system. He's not a creator of the system, right? So he doesn't know that what he's doing, if he abuses it to target a person that does understand how it works, it would lead to capture of the database. Right? That's the mistake. I mean, that's the flaw of this secret society they have, is that the operators don't understand that abusing the weapon leads to the capture of the weapon, right? And this has happened multiple times in this conflict with different weapons that they have, including the rear view mirror. And the two police officers that stopped me because the Chinese understood that I'm looking to the right. Right? I described this in the previous segment. That is another example of the capture of the weapon. I captured the weapon today, right? And I'll tell you more about that in the following minutes. But anyhow, So I found his house. So the sequence, I mean, I didn't know that he was the uncle, right? I learned that after the fact. But the first thing that happened is that the technology that I developed on top of the database of Teodoro Cabello that was leaked to me by them, by him and his family, uh, I identified this prominent neighborhood where he lives, which is called Royal Oaks. Prominent for this network is full of very important people or very sensitive people, like him. There is a Chevron person in there. There's several. Um, and there are $1 million houses. Like this is like Lake Bonne State, something of that level, right? I think Lake Bonne State is higher because it has fewer houses, but uh, and the average value of the house is higher at Lake Bonne State. Like there are more houses over $2 million at Lake Bonne State than at that neighborhood. But it's getting there, right? It's almost at the same level. So I found the neighborhood using my pipeline technology. Then within the neighborhood, his flag got specifically singled out as the most sensitive house across all the neighborhood. And then when I go and look for his name in the tax records that are public records, I find the name and I look for him, and it's this person that, surprise, surprise, has this yellow Lamborghini that I recognize because he has followed me for years. And the license plate is visible in the video. And I go check, and yes, it's him, right? And then I run, because of this, I run the entire entity on the pipeline. I understand that he has to be family of Zuleima Molero Villamizar, or Zuleima Villamizar, Gloria Espina, or Andres Salvador Mendes. So I talked to the informant, right? And I mentioned this in the previous segment, and he was, if I describe his state of mind, I guess, I'm not seeing him, but from the messages I'm reading, it seems like he's in a state, and all of them are in a state of disbelief. Like, it's like finding, to give an idea, right? It's like, put that in perspective, right? This is a person that he's living under an assumed identity, but is really the uncle of my stepson, right? I haven't adopted Sebas because he didn't want me to do that, or Suleima, right? Didn't want me to take that step. I offered, but she declined. Um, um, and I understand why, because the father is here, right? Like the real father was living 2 houses away, but they didn't want me to adopt him, right? But I offered that years ago. But anyhow, this is really the uncle, right? And this is a person, the uncle is living under an assumed identity, right? And it's a millionaire, and all this backstory. It's like finding a needle in a, I don't know, in a beach of sand, right? In the shore, dropping a needle and then trying to find it, like something like that. So they are all in disbelief of how this happened. Right? At the same time, remember, I'm working on this little project that I have with, via the informant, of designing this strategy, right? With some help that he's got, that I don't know exactly who they are. I've talked about in the previous segment how certain things that the informant told me make it obvious that he has the hooks inside the Chinese intelligence, because he's telling me technical things that he cannot possibly know, right? And I've talked about this before. So here's where something interesting develops, that I wasn't sure whether to say or not, because I don't know if it could lead to detection of that Chinese informant, right? On the Chinese intelligence side, I don't know. But I have to wait the possibilities of that happening, which I assume would be pretty low, because if he's passing that information, it's because he feels safe. Right? He feels safe to do that. Versus not saying it, and then blocking potential investigators from understanding this piece of technology, which is crucial. Right? So I'm going to say it. And also at the same time, this will serve to prove to the Chinese intelligence that they are heavily compromised. I told them this before. You should be using your resources to spy on Diosdado Cabello, not on me, because he's the leak. I mean, the leak is coming from him. A spy on Diosdado. Like, you have to put all your agents on Diosdado, right? He is the person that is causing you all this harm. Um, but they keep concentrating on me. I'm not. It's like, have you heard the phrase, shooting the messenger? I'm just the messenger. I'm not. I'm not the leak. You have to, concentrate on Diosdado. It's obvious to me. I don't know how you cannot see that. But anyhow, I'll tell you, right? So the informant told me that a source within the Chinese intelligence told him that that Lamborghini is yellow because of me, right? When he told me that, like, he didn't know exactly. I mean, the informant is not technical, right? So he didn't tell me why he was making that comment, but he told me the Lamborghini is a marker that is tied to you personally. I mean, the Lamborghini could have been any other color, but it's tied to you personally, and that thing is important. It's a technical reason, because we have a system. It's talking in first person. We have a system that allows to find relationships automatically. It's an automated system that knows this person. I mean, in this case, Rodolfo Vargas is a harasser of Reinaldo Aguiar. So his job is to harass Reinaldo Aguiar. This relationship is deterministic, and it's marked by a set of features. He didn't use the word features, but he told me there's certain things on his identity that inform the app that he's tied to you. When he told me that, I immediately understood what happened. I mean, and this goes back years, right? And this is, I mean, I'm going to give you these examples because, I mean, when I give you these examples that I'm going to give you, yeah, they touch on things that are personal to me, right? But but I don't like, let's try to remove that from the conversation for a second. Like, don't take it as I'm talking about me or my things or what I did, or like, I can only talk about my case because, well, I only have context about myself. I cannot see what are the markers of other people. I can only recall my own experiences, and I can recognize the markers. So that's why I can only talk about my case, right? But because I designed this, I understand how it works. I know it sounds cryptic, but I'll tell you, right? Let me get into it. So when he tells me that the yellow Lamborghini is yellow because of me, and that they have this system that ties agents, I mean, harassers to targets, I understood, right? Now, because I haven't scripted this, I don't know what is the best way to convey this this idea, because it's a very complex idea, technically speaking. Okay. So let me start by saying that in my books, since last year when I published the first books, in one of those books there is a TTP, which I called in the books the familiar names TTP, meaning that they would mark the properties of agents with names that are familiar to the target. I thought at the time that it was a measure to lower my psychological awareness, right? Like, if you see a registration for somebody named Aguiar, you think, well, this would be too much of a coincidence. They would never put, an agent of this network in a house with my own last name, right? So I thought it was a psychological tactic. But I don't think that's now. I don't, with what he told me about the yellow Lamborghini, I understand, right? That's not what happened. So let me tell you why the Lamborghini is yellow. I went and checked, because when he told me that, I recalled an instance in which Gillian Walsh, who is an attorney, and this network is run by attorneys, in New York, and she was my girlfriend. We were dating for like 2 years. In one of those instances, she invited me to go to Cancun for a week, and we went together. And in that trip, she proposed to me that they had this, she planned activities, right, for us to do during the week. And she proposed to go to this place where I could rent a Lamborghini and drive it in a closed lap at any speed I wanted, right? Because she knows that I like cars. So I said, well, that sounds pretty good. Let's go there. And I rented a Lamborghini, and it was a yellow Lamborghini, exactly like this one, right? And she took a video of me driving the Lamborghini, and I have the video. I looked at it recently, and it's true. Like what the informant told me, is the same model of, like, of course, this one was a few years older, because this one I think is 2020. and the one that I drove, because this was in 2012 or 2013, I don't know, right? So it was I think it was 20. The model of the car was 2011, if I recall correctly, but it was a yellow Lamborghini. Okay. Now, if you look at the website of this person, right, it says PHP agency. That PHP also has a close relationship to me because before joining Google, I was a PHP engineer at Yahoo and in many other companies. Right? I worked on PHP for over 10 years. I mean, using that programming language. PHP is also a programming language. They're using it as the name of this company, right? Which is supposedly an insurance, an integrity company, they call it. But PHP is also the name of a prominent programming language, a scripting language, really, from the 2000s, right? Yahoo, for example, use PHP, and my companies, like the classified ads websites that I built when I was in Canada, were built on PHP. So this word PHP is highly contextual to me. The color of this car is highly contextual to me. Vargas, the last name he has, it's highly contextual to me because I had a long-time girlfriend back in Montreal that had that name. Yes. And Cecilia, the name of the wife, is also contextual to me because I had a co-worker at Google with that name. So when the informant told me that the color of the Lamborghini, and this again came from the Chinese intelligence, right? Like this tip is coming from the Chinese intelligence, from somebody technical that has understanding of this on the Chinese side. I understand what happened. To give investigators the short version, if I have to put it in a sentence, what probably happened is that they stole Moped from Google and they hacked it by creating an index of the experiences of the targets. So they are really they have a Google search engine, the equivalent to a Google search engine, but instead of ranking web pages, it ranks targets. Sorry, it ranks agents by, and instead of queries. So in Google, you enter a query, right? So you go and you say pizza New York. But in this bizarro search engine that they have, which is really a clone of Google, right? Because they stole the code of Moped. And here I'm going to get into technical jargon that is specific to Google. Many people will not understand what I'm saying, probably. But if you're an investigator, go talk to a Google engineer on search and ask them to tell you what I mean by this, right? So Moped is a fundamental piece of Google. It's a retrieval engine. It's the retrieval engine of Google, but this is not proprietary technology. I mean, Moped, the Moped project itself, yes, it's proprietary to Google, but the techniques of information retrieval on which it's based are not. They're not proprietary. I mean, they are information retrieval techniques, right? It's like saying you cannot own a chemical element, right? I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. But anyhow, the things I'm talking about, what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to talk about, please take this in the context of general information retrieval systems, right? I'm not here to disclose anything proprietary of Google or of any company that I've worked for before. And it is important to say because this is a network of judges harassing me with legal processes, right? So they might pop up a new case for disclosure of secrets, right? That's not the case. Anyhow, so what they did when the informant tells me, they understand that what they did probably, right? I cannot prove it, and it's not my job to prove it. But if I can give authorities a hint of what probably happened, I would say this is what I would put my money. They probably stole Moped and they created a bizarro Google, right? The same way as they have a bizarro Uber to harass people with the cars, then they have a bizarro Google. But this bizarro Google is a bit different. The way I envision it, that they did it, is that instead of indexing documents, they are indexing agents, right? They probably have the two, like the two indices, one of agents and one of targets. But let's talk about the agents index first. So instead of a website, you would index agents. And instead of a query, so in Google, you go and search for Pizza New York. Here, you would search for a target's name or for an address. right? Of where the target lives, for example, right? And then what you would get is who are the most important agents ranked by either prominence or by sensitivity. Right? So you need to understand this search engine. What it does for them is that it lets them understand who is in charge of harassing this person. Right? So instead of typing Pizza New York, you would type Reynaldo Aguiar, and the first person that would come on top would be Andres Mendez, and the second person would probably be uh, Rodolfo Vargas, right? And the third person would probably be Gloria Espina, right? And Telfair, Oscar Telfair, and Richard Bell, like those people, and so forth, right? But and I imagine, right? If it has a UI, they probably have a way to rank by amount of money paid to the agent and liability, like potential criminal liability. Different criteria, right? Because they need to optimize for how close the person is to the agent. For example, Rodolfo Vargas is far away from me. I mean, he's further away than Andres Mendez, right? Because Andres Salvador Mendez, he's in the proximity of my home multiple times per week, posing as a gardener, right? But this one is working in this integrity company in downtown Houston, right? So he's not physically that close right now. But you see, to do this, what you have to do is replace. I mean, they install Moped, and then they have to create an index in which, instead of indexing web documents, they index agents, right? Or they index the targets, right? And what they're doing is, in the case of the targets, when they index the target, then what they do is that they're indexing the experiences of the target. That's what they're doing. So, for example, when Gillian takes me to Cancun and puts me inside of that yellow Lamborghini, an entry gets created because she recorded it with the camera. That's why she took the video. I mean, all this is done automatically. Don't think that there's they have a person typing these things. That's why she recorded the video, because the video is run through a video image classifier that detects that Reynaldo is inside of a yellow Lamborghini. All this by automated means, right? And they make sure that that gets indexed into the entry in the index that represents Reynaldo Aguiar. And now it has in the section experiences yellow Lamborghini, right? Then, when Reynaldo gets a job at Yahoo, the resume that Reynaldo used to get the job gets ingested. And PHP is mentioned multiple times in that document. And those keywords get indexed as well, right? In the job experience or work experience section of the index. Reynaldo has a girlfriend in Montreal in 2005 whose name is Claudia Vargas. Then the name Claudia gets ingested into the romantic interest section. So you see, they have the experiences and they have them categorized by section, whether it's a romantic experience, whether it's a leisure experience, whether it's a work experience. So maybe this is a good point for me to transition to what that index would look like, right? So let me do that experiment here, right? So I'm going to create, so basically, let me start by a simple example, okay? I'm going to start by creating an index for web documents to show you how a web search company would do this, right? I'm not talking about Google. Any web search company would do something like this, right? So imagine that you have a web page. In fact, let's do this example with this web page. That is this, right? So what they would do, they would create sections. So imagine that I create a table with two columns, right? So I'm going to call this section title, which represents the title of the page. And then I'm going to put on each line in this section things that appear on the title. So PHP Agency Integrity Company, right? Those are the things. So it would be PHP Agency Integrity Company, okay? Then the body. On the body of the page, you have Board Council, Houston, Texas, right? And the word PHP appears again, and 10 years. And MD, the title. So I was a managing director at Goldman Sachs. That was my title, see? So in this web page of Rodolfo, he has already, and I'm just getting started. He has all these keywords that are directly related to me. Houston, Texas, where I live, PHP, 10 years, that appears in my resume. MD appears in my resume. PHP again in the body appears in my resume. Uh, yeah, that thing, the life, the title of the video is also relevant because I created a tech talk at Google that had that title. Let me see. Yeah, the word leaders from key opinion leaders, right, appears 2 times in this page. You see? Yeah, that's what they're doing. So, here they have things like PHP leaders, leader, which is a synonym. They have Houston, PHP again. Interesting. The word agent appears 2 times. But you get the idea, right? So then they do I'm talking about the search engines, right? At this point, indexing web documents. So what they do this process of indexing each web page that they find in the entire internet. And then when a user enters a query, say that I'm looking for, I don't know, pizza. So the word pizza is not found in this document. So it would get a score of 0. But if the word pizza was found in any of these sections, it would increase the score. And depending in which section, has a different weight. So it has more weight if the hit, we call it a hit, is found in the title than in the body, because the title is constrained. There's reasons for that. So the weight is not the same. Different sections weight different, and they have different meaning, right? Uh, and then when you do a query like pizza, what they do, they count the hits on all the documents in the index. They do some optimizations to be able to do it fast, okay? But assume that they do it for a lot of documents. And then they sort them by who has the highest score. And then the ones on top are the ones that you end up seeing in your Google search results page. That's basically how, the search engine results page, right? That's basically how search engines work in general, right? So what they doing, my theory, right, when he told me about the Lamborghini, right, is that they basically stole Moped, the technology that powers this, the underlying technology from Google. And I'm telling you this because I worked in that team. And that's how I can see it. That explains how I can see this, right? Because I worked in that team for years, and I know that system like the palm of my hand, right? Um, so what they did, they stole the code, and then what they did, because they don't have engineers that could really take it further, what they did was to hack it, to basically change the index. They replaced the web index by an index of agents and an index of targets. And that way, they have a search engine that allows you to search for a query, but the query, instead of being pizza or pizza New York, the query is a name of a target or the name of an agent. So if you search for if you do a query for an agent, you get the targets that agent is targeting. And if you search for a target, you get who are the most prominent agents that target that target, right? And that's how they assign the agents. And they do this automatically, right, with the app. So if they need to harm a target, well, if they need somebody that's close, they would run the query through this system and find who is the people that are closest to this target, either on the romantic vertical, or on the business vertical, because they have the sections. They know from the experiences that they have indexed of the target who is close in which context, right? It's a tremendous weapon. Um, uh, And of course, they can index the experiences in different ways, right? One way is by mining information from Facebook, right? Or because people post in Facebook what they're doing, right? And they get those feeds and they index them, right? And the other way is because if they, like in my case, right, where they have these agents physically like inserted inside of my home, right, in my circle, in my inner circle. So they create the experiences, like when Gillian took me to Cancun and put me inside of that yellow Lamborghini and recorded the video, and the video went straight to the intelligence in China, right, and got indexed in this bizarro Google. So they have the power to create experiences, and then they use that to then design the identities of the agents, right? So the reason why they put PHP, what I'm trying to say is that the reason why they put PHP as the company name of that front identity of Rodolfo Vargas is to increase his score for the query Reinaldo Aguiar in this bizarro Google that they have. So the system can understand that he is very relevant to me. This is the reason why they registered the house of Alvin Cantero Mina under the name of Johnny Bravo Aguiar, Johnny Alfredo Bravo Aguiar, and Gladys something, right? Gladys being the first name of Penelope Suarez, who was my girlfriend, right? So that, I mean, let's think about uh, the what the index of a target, the document index for a target would look like, right? For example, for Rinaldo. So this would be the document for Rodolfo Vargas, right? I'm gonna put quotes because that's not really his real name. And this would be the document for Reinaldo Aguiar, right? Right, something like that, right? I imagine they also have one for addresses and things like that. So you see, uh, and then they probably have some a section for vehicles, maybe vehicles that he has driven, right? And here they have the yellow Lamborghini, uh, blue Tesla, black Tesla, red Tesla. You see? So if you do a query in this index for Rodolfo Vargas, right? What they would do, they would first fetch the document of Rodolfo Vargas, and in this vehicle, in the section of vehicles driven by Rodolfo Vargas, they would have the yellow Lamborghini, right? And they will also have the white. I think it was a Tacoma, the white Tacoma that he was using to follow me at the Shell gas station in 2024. So he will have those and other vehicles that he drives, of course, right? But he has these two. So what they will do, the first thing they do, they fetch the document for Rodolfo Vargas and they change the query to expand it, so synonymize it basically, by using things on the sections, like the yellow Lamborghini, right? So now the yellow Lamborghini will get into this expanded query, and then they run that query again against the targets index. And that then the yellow Lamborghini on the rewritten query will basically match, will create a match here, right? His wife name, Claudia, will create a match here, right? And his PHP thing on his website will create a match here, right? So this will increase the score of my document for his query tremendously. And not only that, it gives context because the system now understands that this is something related to vehicles, romantic interest, and work. I mean, it's obvious, right? So this is an agent that is related to an agent posing as a romantic interest to steal his invention, right? I mean, it's obvious, right? Any system can draw that conclusion just by the nature of the hits, in which sections the hits fell. So you see, like this allows me to see, I mean, this information I got from this Venezuelan informant that works in the army intelligence that really came from somebody in the Chinese intelligence, in China probably. This lets me see that what they did is that they stole Moped and then they hacked it in this way. And I'm saying this because I'm pretty sure this is what happened, and the Chinese must know that they did this, right? So when I tell them this, I want them to please, for once and for all, understand that you have a very serious leak, and it's coming directly from the Estado Cabello. There's no other explanation. There's no way I could possibly know this. Um, so, you know, you have to get rid of your data. That you have to put him under surveillance, contain him, quarantine him. You have to do something because he's going to drive you out of business in a matter of weeks. So be careful with your data. So anyhow, this is now I have to tell you, when I was at Google, and this is pretty fun. When I was at Google, I think the year was 20. This must have been 2014 when I met Gloria Espino, which is really Zuleima Molero Villamizar. The first thing she did was to invite me to come to Katy to spend a few days here at supposedly her apartment. That wasn't really her apartment. I know that, right? But they portrayed that situation to me. So I came here and I was working from her apartment, right? Which of course is marking the geo index of Cesaro Cabello. Right? And I'm going to tell you where the apartment is. That might be relevant. Maps. So that apartment is on Westheimer Parkway. No, Westheimer Road, I think it's called. Let's look for the target at Westheimer. Yes, this one. So it's in the same road, but it's on the other side of the highway. So where is the Kroger? Let me see. It's next to the Kroger, basically. Okay. So the Kroger is here. No, this is no, no. They're sending me to another place. Let me see. Okay, so this is Westheimer. Yeah, so here's the Kroger, right? So it's this apartment complex here. Yes. So it's this apartment complex here at the 20, this one, 22,400 Westheimer Parkway. So this was the first prison that they put me in, the first cell, let's call it that way, that they put me in when they brought me to Katy the first time. And the actual apartment was this one. I think it was, so the garage was here at these coordinates, 29.73,490. That's the latitude, and the longitude is minus 95, 75, 912. And that, so it's this corner apartment, right? It was. Anyhow, when I was in that apartment, I had a meeting with Mayur Thakur from Google, right? And we talked about an idea that I invented called entity nafus centrality, which basically, I'm not going to describe the thing, but so I basically proposed to him to patent it, because at the time there was an award program at Google that if you created an invention and got a patent for it, they would pay you a bonus of $10,000 per invention, something like that. So I wanted to get the money, right? So I explained the idea to him, and he declined to patent. He said, "No, let's not patent it. Let's keep it as a trade secret." And I'm not going to go into the details, but I have to tell you that when I see this thing of the yellow Lamborghini and how they stole moped to do this, it reminded me of entity nafu centrality a lot, a lot. And that thought on itself is profound. It gave me the chills for two reasons. One, because it suggests to me that what Major did was to steal the thing for this network, to create this monstrosity, right? That then has been used to harass millions of people. And the second thing that crossed my mind is that I may have had something to do with the invention itself, of this terrible system, right? Of this atrocity. And that on itself is a profound thought that it distorts me, right? To think that something that, that that was produced by my mind could have been used for this, right? To attack millions of people. It's a horrifying thought. Um, anyhow, the good thing is that I can see, right? Because when you create something, you can recognize it, right? When you see it, right? And I think that explains a lot. But you see, so the fact that he has all these markers that are very contextual to me is a signal that he has a family relationship to. I mean, it's a confirmation that what the informant told me, that he's the uncle of Sebastian. Right? So I encourage authorities, if you hear this, don't take my word for it. Like, show this to a senior. I'm talking about a senior staff or above engineer at Google Search. But of course, you have to make sure that it's not compromised. You have to vet that person before you expose them to this information, as if you were vetting somebody to work for the FBI, right? Because he could be working for the other side. My recommendation would be vet that person first and then show them this video, and get more context that I cannot give you in this situation that I am, right? But once I'm out of this situation, if you're interested, I put myself at your disposal for anything that you need. Like, I'm here to help. But yeah, and going back to the hyper-local thing here in Katy, this is a confirmation that he is directly related to the romantic interest side of the espionage, right? Because of the selection of Cecilia Vargas in the. So this is obviously something that is the intersection of romance and espionage and work, right? I mean, it has to be, Zuleima Molero Villamizar or Penelope Suarez, right? But because the informant already told me that he's the uncle of Sebastian, this is coming from the Moleros, right? So he's one of them. And he is the financial node. That's why that Lamborghini, that infomercial, to portray him as a successful person, is important, because it gives deniability if they get investigated by the IRS or by, in the unlikely event, because they have this area under control, right? But in the unlikely event that he's investigated or questioned, they can out his lawyers, right? The lawyers that the Chinese will assign to him, the Robert Marcos, Weinberg, Butler, Haley, PC or equivalent, or the OWO lawyers, or the Adams law firm, like whatever, right? They will say, no, this is just a super successful person. He's a prodigy in this family, and he's so successful that he's helping out his siblings, right? Because he has a good heart. So that's why he's, donating these millions of dollars to his 5, 6, 7 siblings, right? Every year, right? So that's the rationale, right? Why they need to do this. Now, this also reminded me, because like I think I put this on my notes. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous segment, but this TTP makes it detectable. What authorities probably could do is to look for videos in which there is, a young person being portrayed as successful and displaying wealth, especially vehicles in the video. Uh, I would rank the vehicles by the price, right? More exotic means more likely this person is an agent, distributing capital to family members or related entities. Now, this reminded me that there is an executive at Google that is portrayed or featured in a commercial of Mercedes-Benz prominently. He talks in the commercial. And it's in the commercial they put his name and his title, and he's a very high up executive at Google search specifically, which is where they stole moped from. Um, and I don't know, made me wonder if that executive could, I mean, I mean, yeah, it's, but the thing with the car, right? The infomercial with the expensive car. More than wondering if that person could be an agent, what makes me wonder if maybe he could be a financial node distributing capital to related siblings or related entities or things like that, right? So I don't know. It's just an idea that crossed my mind. Um, so extrapolating from that, I can tell you, right? I found, I mean, these houses have been flagged for a long time, right? But I'll give you some examples of the other siblings, and this is the other thing that has them desperate that I didn't mention this in the previous segment, but there's another thing that makes them desperate this weekend that happened, right? Where they escalated is that I did a play recently in which I woke up early in the morning, like at 4 a.m., and I went driving, when there's no traffic and they can't, I mean, they can follow me and they follow me, right? But they cannot be that obvious because, if they create a traffic of 200 vehicles at 3 a.m., this would become obvious to the FBI, right? So they can't do that. So they have to follow me with a few vehicles. So I did this at 3 a.m. and I went to the houses of all the, like three of the siblings, right? And I took photos of the license plates of the cars that were parked outside of their homes, one after the other. Right, I hit them, the three of them, at the same time in a space of 20 minutes. So of course, when they saw this, the Chinese and the Venezuelans understood that I know who the siblings are. I have them identified, and I have them identified for months, right? But I took this measure in the recent last few days. Uh, And it was precisely because I got this information about the yellow Lamborghini that allowed me to understand this thing that I'm describing in this segment. And when I understood that, I basically tuned my ranker based on this information, and I could see clearly that these are the brothers of Suleiman, right? The siblings, right? So I'm going to tell you that they're already in the bucket, right? And I'll give you some examples, and you will see how they match in the property registrations of the tax documents of these properties that they own match things that are very contextual to me, right? And you will see, that this occurrence, sorry, that this occurrence matches, like it's the same thing over and over again with all these houses that I know for a fact it's the siblings, right? The family members. So if you go to the cold module, sorry, storage, no, console, cloud, google.com/storage. Right. So I'm going to walk you through how to get there. You go to this bucket call mobile 2024. Then you sort by this. You go to court evidence. Then you find Greg Abbott. No, sorry, underscore DOJ first. So within the DOJ folder, you find Greg Abbott. Within Greg Abbott, you search for John Miko. of 2310 Britton Ridge Drive, who is basically providing safe haven to Andres Salvador Mendez on a weekly basis, right? Multiple times per week. Then you click on Andres Salvador Mendez, who is the real husband of Zuleima Molero Villamizar, formerly known as Gloria Espina, formerly known as the petitioner in the 37th Court, with Judge Oscar Telfair um, and Richard Bell. And within that, there's this folder for Rodolfo, right? So these other folders that say 01, they are the family members, right? So this one, um, this one is one of the brothers. I think it's the little brother. And this one is interesting because there was a ruse in 2023 where Zuleima Molero Villamizar / Gloria Espina drove me, 2024, sorry. She drove me in front of his house intentionally, so I would see him. And this is important because it shows collusion. I'm going to tell you this backstory because not to talk about me. And again, like this is one of the instances in which I feel bad about talking about myself because you may think that I'm just trying to make this about me. It's not the case. But again, I can only offer you this because I can only see my own experiences. Right? And I want to tell you this backstory specifically because it shows collusion with Enrique Morales, who was working with Penelope Suarez, who were both working in collusion with the Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bernard. So this gives you an indirect link between the Lieutenant Colonel at Lake Point Estates, where Robert Mueller lives, and Phil Denning is the president of the HOA, and Zuleima Molero Villamizar, direct link. This backstory that I'm going to tell you. So if you go back a few sessions and you see that comment that I made that Enrique Morales, in one of the times that I met him, he hinted to me to look at the license plates. Okay. And then they did these rules with the lieutenant colonel, where they put the two vehicles, one that says RMY and the other one that said not few. After I posted something about being alone in the conflict against this network on my website to make me think that he was working for the FBI. Right? I described this before. But I'm telling you this because to remind you that Enrique Morales pointed me towards the license plates, right? Which was a mistake because in reality the license plates are full of markers, right? But you know, they thought I would never really figure it out, right? Anyhow, so when that happened, right, I started seeing a lot of plates that had it's kind of a symbol for uh, um, members of the army. Like I don't know exactly how it works in Texas. I know it's something with the DPS in Texas, but there is a way that if you are a veteran, you can get these license plates that are mark you as a veteran, basically. Right? So I don't recall exactly the sequence, right? But they started passing in front of me vehicles that had this marking, right? So Zuleima immediately, I mean, Gloria Espina at that point, right? I knew her as Gloria Espina, and I thought she was my partner, and she was, you know, we were. I thought we were a family, right? Um, so anyhow, she made a comment that, you know, I understand now that it was just to lower my awareness of that house, and that house. I'm going to tell you which one is that. So first, let's search for this, right? So this is 10231 Pili Boss. Pili Boss, I think. 10231, right? Yes. So this is the area where the Valley side property that I have is, right? So let me show you. So this one over here is the house, is my house, right? The 26714 Valley Side Drive. So that's the house that they're trying to evict me from using the family case. So that's that. And so Gloria Spina, right, who I knew at that point as Gloria Spina, she made it. So what they did is that they park one of those vehicles in these two houses, the the 10306 Lara Creek Drive and the 10302 Lara Creek Drive. In these two houses, they parked two vehicles that had those markings, right, as if they were veterans. And Suleima, like Gloria Spina, she created a situation to basically create psychological stress that forced me to take her out of the house and show her something outside. I don't want to like divert the conversation with what it was, but she did this intentionally. And as we're driving outside, she makes the comment that the person in this house in the 1036, that the person in that house is a widow because her husband passed away in the military. She made that comment. So look at what she's saying. Like, I mean, I understand this in 2026, right? 2 years after. But if you look at this, what she's telling me is, in reality, this house is owned by somebody who is in the military. And she knows, because she's working with Enrique Morales, that I'm aware of the plates, right? Of the license plates. And that they're making me believe that the ones that are marked with military veteran things are FBI, right? So the sequence with the plates and the veteran plates, it was to make me believe that that I was being protected by the FBI, something like that, right? Like the same rules that they did at Lake Point States with the lieutenant colonel, but in a different flavor, right? So if you put myself on my shoes, what you would see is that you have this lieutenant colonel in Lake Point States where you just bought a property that is implicitly telling you that he's helping you. And they have these two houses with these cars marked as if they were veterans, right? So I'm thinking, this is the FBI, right? I mean, that was the rules, right? But they did, I mean, and this is the interesting thing, they could have done that with any house, right? But they could have done that with the pretties, with the Russian agents that work for Citgo. But they choose to do it with this house. The reason is because these two houses are sensitive to them. They're probably one of those two houses is where Andres Salvador Mendez was. So she's telling me that the person that I would guess is the one that she says that was a widow, the 1036, right? She's telling me that that house doesn't even have a man inside. That's what she's telling me. There's a single woman there who is now a widow because the husband was in the military. So I mean, this would lower, if I'm suspecting of anything, right? This would lower my suspicion about that house automatically. And on top of that, they put the car marked as if it was a veteran to make me think that it could also be the FBI, right? So this is a house that I'm not going to mess with, because I have two reasons to believe I should not mess with this house, right? So that's probably the house where Andres Salvador Mendez was. And this other house on the corner is interesting because it's the strongest house in this area. By strongest, I mean that it has the best possible angle of view against, and I measured this with software. I use software to measure this. And I imagine the FBI or the NSA must have some flavor of this, like probably 100 times better than what I have. But I have some technology that estimates the angles of visions of properties or places, right? This thing has the best possible angles of everything. You can see the park, you can see the streets you can see the three streets perfectly. So that T, you can see everything. You can see who's coming in and out in all possible directions, right? Including taking into account the geometry of the back streets, right? Because from that house, you can also see this corner over here, right? Which is the only possible exit for people even coming from this side of the world, right? So I mean, this house here, the 10302, is the most strategic location in probably, I don't know, half a mile around, right? So there was somebody important in there, right? Maybe it was a mini compound. Maybe the two houses were controlled by, because this is a state sponsor. They're not gonna spare, buying one house or buying four houses. It's the same to them. It's not money is not an issue, right? In these kind of things. So maybe he had control of the two houses, right? So imagine what I'm telling you is that Suleiman Villamizar in reality was controlling my own home and also two of the other 10 homes in this small area, right? So she had direct control over, she and Andres Salvador Mendez, they had direct control over at least 30% of these houses in this street. Imagine that, right? How can I fight against that? But now, that time that we went out, because I'm thinking that I'm being protected by the FBI. I mean, this is what they're portraying to me, right? And then they had this young man playing basketball on this house outside. He was playing hoops. He had a hoop, like a basketball thing outside, and he was not wearing a t-shirt. And I could see that he was muscular. Like he was a person that, I mean, he was a young boy. I mean, he was younger than me, but I could see that he trained, right? That he looked to me like he could have been military. That if I could put it in a way, right? This is a person that works daily with his body. That's what I thought. And I'm seeing all these plates that they're showing in these houses that are related to the military. I'm thinking this is a military operative, right? Because I know the solution to this has to be military. Because they're a paramilitary group attacking everybody, right? So when I pass next to him, I tell her, I remember this instance, I tell her, listen, they are going to get in trouble. Look, this guy is probably military, but that was the brother, right? So this was a ruse to make me lower my guard to that house specifically. Um, and that house is marked in the index. It has markers that are contextual to me, all the whole thing. But, beyond that, there's also another incident in which another one of the brothers of Suleima Molero Villamizar almost drove me off the road. And this is documented in my books. I have photos of that SUV. So I went to his house. He also lives on the other side, right? So he lives on this. So if you zoom out, right? So my house is here, right? They had the husband here, just a few feet away. One of the brothers here, right? And the other brother is or was on this Harmony, what is it called? Harmony Shores, right? And the house, I think, is also ends in 006, I think. Yeah, and that is the black SUV that you see in the Google Street View. Yeah, 26922 Harmony Shores Drive. Um, you know, uh, the license plate is SCTLND. It's a vanity license plate, Texas, black background. So you see what they do, right? So they had me surrounded, basically in every direction that I could take. They had a brother of Suleima Molero Villamizar, right? Posted on any direction that I could take on. So you can see here, this is a military technique, right? Doesn't matter which street I take, they will always intercept me if they need to, even with the brother, right? You might. And but more than that, I want to tell you that in this pocket, that in this folder that I'm showing you here, you have already all the family members ranked. Well, not ranked, group clustered together with the aliases, right? But the one that is not an alias, I mean, all these are aliases, right? But I mean, I'm guessing, like what I'm trying to say is that I'm guessing some aliases are disposable. Like, for example, Andres Salvador Mendez has like 5 of these disposable aliases, like Speedy Gonzalez, right? It's not difficult to create an identity for a gardener, right? You can create this in a second. But it's more difficult to create an identity for somebody like Phil Denny, right? Who is the president of the homeowners association of Lake Point Estates where Robert Mueller lives. That is a more difficult thing to do. Or to create an alias for Robert Bernard, right? Or for Larry Ryan, who controls utility companies in Texas. Or for Mark Swisher, who controls oil leases in Texas, right? So these are identities harder to create. So that's what I mean, that the Rodolfo Vargas identity is more stable. It's an identity that they cannot change, right? They cannot disappear Rodolfo Vargas from the world easily, right? Because it will raise questions. So that's why I think the best entry point for an investigative agency to step in would be Rodolfo Vargas, because it's an identity that they cannot get rid of, and it's directly tied to all these entities, right? And also to Phil Denning, and Phil Denning is tied to the police department harassment in multiple police departments. So it's a perfect entry point um, that will take you at the end to Robert Mueller, uh, without a doubt, right? And in fact, if you go this path, in this bucket, in this folder, there is a photo of Robert Mueller in front of my house. Let me show you. Let me see if I can find it. So if you go to 01 Rodolfo and Cecilia Vargas, right? I think this would be uh, maybe here. No, no, it's not here. Yes, incidents at Lake Pond Estates could be here. No, it's actually on the incidents related to the pharmacy at Kroger. And this is I mean, I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to make this segment about me, but I recommend authorities to check out this part, because this is super high liability. Like, this is the kind of crimes that make people talk quickly. And if you dig into this, you will understand what I'm saying. Um, it has to do with me picking up prescriptions at the Kroger pharmacy. But anyhow, in one of these, I can't recall exactly what it is, to be honest. But I'll persist because it's important. Um, One second. And all these things are tied to Rodolfo Vargas, right? Personally, because he was following me this day that I was going to the pharmacy, and he got recorded by the cameras. So there you go, right? So this is the front of my house. You can see in this photo Robert Mueller next to my security cameras. You can see these two here on the back of the mailbox are the security cameras that Phil Denning is suing me for. I mean, suing the company for, right? In the 268 court. So you have a photo of Robert Mueller next to the two cameras that are being used to create the lawsuit in the 268 court. I mean, imagine. And this is in the same folder where uh, Rodolfo Vargas and evidence of him following me to the pharmacy to harm me exists, right? And I mean, do I need to spell it out? Um, I think it's I would think that it's the best possible entry point. I mean, Rodolfo Vargas, right? And again, he has I mean, because money always leaves a trail. If he's handling all these millions of dollars as to justify his own lifestyle and the siblings' lifestyle, so he has to be handling millions of dollars per year. Um, so and I have the bank account numbers in the Netherlands, which are posted. So if you go to this folder of Rodolfo Vargas, you will see that there is a subfolder that says financial crimes. Mm, where is it? One second. One second. Yes, financial crimes. So this is a report that I submitted to the IRS about the Moleros specifically. I mean, this family that is targeting me in this way, right? And in it, I attach evidence that I found inside of my own home that contains encoded bank accounts in Rotterdam. What is it? Here's the information about the accounts, right? You have the account numbers and everything in here. But I can't recall what city was it. I think it was Rotterdam, if I recall correctly. Yeah, Rotterdam. Yeah, in the second line, you see. And even I have a photo of the letter where the account numbers are encoded, and it's attached in here. Then the information was encoded in the footer of the letter, right? And I have the letter physical. I have the physical letter that you can analyze, and I imagine it will have fingerprints and things like that. I don't know. You can analyze the veracity of this and the authenticity of this and the bank account. And I'm sure this is going to be traced to him, right? Because he is the entity that distributes the money. Right? None of the other siblings have the public profile to justify that level of income. Only him. So it has to be him by pure logic. So that's why this thing will work. So I'm gonna move away from this topic a little bit, and to close this topic, I want to tell you of to remind you of the implications of what I'm telling you about the use of a moped-like technology or a Google-like search engine to harass people at large scale. What that really means for society, right, and for democracy and for personal freedom of not only in America but in other countries as well. So this is a serious civilizational problem because in the same way that Google transformed all of lives for better, right, in the 2000s, by applying this technology, they are using the same technology to worsen the lives of millions of people using exactly the same technology, right? So it's not a question about what the technology does; it's how you use it, right? And they're obviously using it to harm people, right? So at large scale, industrial scale, Google scale, really, like planetary scale. Um, so I don't know. It's a profound thought. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is, well, in the previous segment, I described how I understood that they could see even in which direction I point my eyes towards when I'm driving the suburban, right? Which means, and I'm saying this because of the two separate incidents with two separate police officers of two different separate police departments stopping me for no reason really, giving me a warning, but approaching my vehicle on the passenger side, and then being concentrated on looking to see what I have in that area of the car. So this let me understand that they're watching even where I look, right? Um, because they want to understand what is that how is that I'm operating this technology that I have, right? Inside of the car. Because I'm not carrying a computer with me. They know that I don't have a computer. So how is that I'm doing this, right? So they want to see how it works operationally, right? And this led me to understand that the place where they have the camera is hidden behind the mirror of the rear view mirror, right? And I chatted a little bit with the informant, and he confirmed that that's the place, right? So what I did, I quarantined the device, meaning I put a cage, a radio frequency cage, on so it cannot communicate. I did this tonight. It was an experiment that I ran. So basically, I quarantined the rear view mirror in a way that it cannot communicate with the cars that they have. When I did this, let me stop the presentation. And I was at Baliside, right, at my home, but I came back to the office to do this demonstration. So I left the house, but with the device quarantine. When I did this, something amazing happened. They did not follow me in the entire on the entire trajectory. Uh, Only like four cars intercepted me. But I mean, this is super unusual. You will have to check the recordings of all the times that I've driven at any hour of the day or night. They always follow me, right? I think in this trajectory, the least number of vehicles I could encounter would be 50 vehicles, the minimum, right? Tonight, I only encountered four. So, this let me see. What is happening here really is that the weapon is the rear view mirror. And they probably put it at that time that they broke into the vehicle recently, right? They installed it. But the way it works, it makes it obvious to me now how it works. The way it works is that this device is a beacon, like it's sending a ping, a low energy, low frequency, and very small payload ping, just probably one beat, right, or a couple of beats. Like it's not, It's not like a large data stream. All it has to do is to identify I'm here, right? And with all these cars that they have parked outside of the houses across Katy, all the roads, that's why they have all these cars. One of the reasons why they have all these cars, spread everywhere, because they're sensors, right? So as this rear view mirror is passing on any location where there is a car located in this area, at least that car knows, oh, this is the target, right? This is target X, right? Uh, and then this brings me other technical questions that I have to think more about. I don't have the answers yet, but it gives me some ideas of questions that I need to ask myself. And I'm gonna give you my questions in case you want to think about this too, right? So once the car that I'm passing next to knows, oh, this is Rinaldo, then the car sends that information to China, to this more centralized system, and then that system starts routing agents to intercept me at every possible place where I could, make a turn. And they repeat this process over and over again. And that way they know real time, 24/7, where in the world I am located. And this is the way they harass me. But once I quarantine the rear view mirror, they can't do it, right? I mean, they have to track me visually. It's harder. And it has delay, and they cannot coordinate this harassment at this level of precision that they do, right? And here something interesting happened. So because now no car followed me, basically all the noise disappeared, right? And the cars that did follow me became very visible to my system. I mean, to the point there's no noise, right? And this makes it that the prominent agents are easily like way more. I mean, the precision of my system went up by like 400% tonight when I ablated that device, because now there's less noise on the street, right? Yeah, you could think, well, it's because there's less traffic because it's late at night. But I can tell you, I have driven at any hours of the night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Like they always consistently follow me with a lot of vehicles because they cannot. I mean, these are countries that see existential risk for their authoritarian regimes. They are not going to let this go easily. Right? They're not going to let me drive alone and communicate with informants freely. Right? They have to do everything in their power to stop me from communicating. Even if they cannot understand how I'm communicating, at the very least, they have to make it difficult for me to communicate. So I cannot get information that could help me defeat them. Right? But tonight, it was empty, right? It was dead. But it was because they could not even see that I left the house. I mean, electronics, right? Because the rear view mirror is quarantined, and the car, I removed all the markings in the car, like all the logos and all the things that they could use computer vision to identify the car with the cameras that they have on the cars, on their cars, and houses, right? So because I removed the markings of the cars, and now I ablated this electronic device that is the main weapon, the beacon that basically says I'm Rinaldo to all their cars, right, and houses and phones. They didn't even know that I left the house, electronically speaking. I mean, they know because they have the visual surveillance agents next to the house, but the app is not informed in real time. They will have to go and update the app saying, he passed over here, and that delay is enough for me to avoid the surveillance in a way. So anyhow, I'm giving this story for two reasons. One, to tell you that the main weapon these days is the three reasons really. The rear view mirror in the suburban, right? That implies that now that I'm posting this, they will try to remove it, obviously, right? Because this is direct evidence against the Chinese agents that installed it, that live at the Brent Holmes property at the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494, next door, who are probably listening to this right now, right? So they have to now, next time I go out, they're going to be desperate to try to remove it and change it back to a non-bug version of a not so sophisticatedly bug version of the rear view mirror. So I'm going to make the point of always parking that vehicle with open view to the skies. So if authorities investigate this, yeah, they have at least an opportunity to review, the footage of your military satellites to see, if they broke into the car or not. So that's what I can do. That's all I can do. Right? I'm not going to remove it because I want to give them the opportunity to break into the car. I also have cameras in the car, so they will have to disable the cameras, steal the system or do something to it, which would be more evidence. Um, so that's why I'm telling you that. And because of the implication of this, right? This means that all these people that are parking those cars outside of their driveways, right when I arrive to Valley Side, right, or before I leave, uh, they are doing this intentionally to help the Chinese intelligence track them, right? So it's also something. It's an observation that could help authorities gain leverage for these people that are placing cars next to my houses or properties to be accountable. And that leverage could help you get them to talk um, faster, right? So that's the other reason I'm saying that. And of course, the other thing is, I would suggest that you try to understand how industrialized is the deployment of those weaponized rear view mirrors in the US. Um, is it at the supply chain level? Is it at the manufacturing level? Is it at the distribution level? Is it at the car manufacturer level? Like, in some place they must be inserting some version of it, right? Maybe not as sophisticated. I mean, mine is super low latency, and imagine high security, right? Like they must have taken steps to make it hard to detect. Um, but it's also low latency, right? Because as soon as I leave that house, they start intercepting me if the device is not quarantined. So I don't know. That's another important observation. And to close this segment, I want to tell you something that I observed with the security camera system in this property. So for the last few months, I observed that at crucial points in the conflict, like for example, if they wanted to do something to the fence, or if they wanted to, jump over the fence to plant a bug in the backyard, something like that, my camera system would reboot. And I don't want to get too much into the details. I mean, the camera systems of one of the camera systems of this property, I have multiple of them, but one of them would reboot. The one that looks to the backyard, for example, commonly reboots. When it reboots, one of the cameras fails to come online, and they know that, right? Because they have the exfiltration technology to get the video, right? Um, but I could never figure out how is that they were rebooting the machine. The machine, the device that records the videos, the security videos, right? They can reboot it at will, but I couldn't understand how they did it. But in the recent days, I started doing experiments and I figured it out. So so this device is located in a closet that has an electrical outlet, right? And this electrical outlet is connected to this. I mean, the machine, this recording device, is connected to this electrical outlet. Now, this is let me show you a map of the property to kind of ground this explanation. Calendar, right? Okay. Right. So this is the property in question, right? So this is this property that where I am right now, right? So right now I'm giving the demo from an area that it's around here, right, where the mouse is. Now this white box over here that you see here at these coordinates is a generator. So it's a backup. It's a power generator, right? So it works with gas, with natural gas. And the way it works is if the power goes out, this generator kicks in, and it kicks in pretty quickly. So I think it has like a battery inside, right? Like, so even if there is a small variation of voltage, then what is supplying the power really is the battery on that generator, right? So I don't see fluctuations of power here in some areas in the big majority of the house. But there's some parts of the house where if there is a fluctuation of power, I can see it that the lights dim a little bit. So what this tells me is that some part of this house is power or wire to the generator, like directly, right? So if there is a power discontinuity or low voltage or whatever condition, right, that part of the house will not even see the misbehavior in the supply of electricity because it's getting the power from the battery that it's inside of the generator, right? What I'm saying is that the generator has the capacity to store power. It's a generator with a battery. That's what it's. I don't know really. I'm not an expert in that field, but from as an user perspective, it feels this way. But I can also tell you that not all the house is wired in this way. There is a part of the house, like for example the garages, that are wired directly to center point. Uh, so if there is a power anomaly, I can see the lights dim a little bit on the garage, for example, and in this closet, importantly. So this closet is located more or less on these coordinates. I'm going to give you the coordinates. I think it's more or less over, I would say over here. 29, so the latitude, right? 29.75772, and the longitude is minus 95.80162. So I'm telling you all this, and this is important, is because to tell you that in this closet, I think the closet is wired directly to center point, the electrical distribution company, right? Not to the generator. So this is what I did, right? First, I've been running experiments with this for like a month. So I connected the camera system to an UPS of the brand APC, multiple of them, and they can reset the cameras. I think they have a kind of a remote switch, and they can lower the voltage on the output of the UPSs that are of the brand APC. Uh, there's another brand, Cyber something. They also have the same capability. Turn the they can make the system reboot, and by rebooting the system, they basically disable one of the cameras, and that allows them to get in on that angle. You see. Um, so then what I did, I went to Micro Center and I purchased not a UPS, but a battery, like a large battery pack that has AC capabilities. The brand is Jackery, right? It's a like kind of an orange brand. The logo is orange. So I put that instead of the UPS. They can also reboot it, right? So they have the same capability they have towards the UPS, but with the Jackery device as well. And these devices are all made in China, right? So it's obvious to me that there is something in common that they compromise that allows them to do this remotely, right? To reset. This is important. I'm telling you all this not to complain, but because this basically gives a backdoor to the Chinese intelligence, the Venezuelan intelligence, and the Iranian intelligence to disable any security camera that is secure with these UPS systems. Right? Everybody is thinking that the power supplies are secure, and they're not. They can reset them with radio frequency remotely, right? And then once the cameras go out, they go in, right? So then I did something, right? I plugged the cameras without UPS to the outlet in that closet. And when I did that, I noticed that the lights, I mean, after a few days, right? At some point, they turned off the cameras. I imagine because they needed to do something, right? They were testing, I don't know. They flicker the electricity, they made the electricity flicker, and I could see inside of the closet, I was inside of the closet, and I could see that the light dimmed. So I understood that this closet has the same properties as the garages, meaning it's wired directly to center point. It's not going through my generator. So they can lower the voltage in the closet, and therefore they can reset the cameras. Right? So I understood that. And after I understood that, then what I did is that I connected a long extension from the side of the house that is wired to the generator to then be able to connect the cameras in the closet. And then they can't reset the cameras when they're connected to the generator in this way. So what this tells me, I mean, this is pretty interesting, right? So this tells me that one, they have control on center point to lower the voltage of my house, to reset the cameras in this way. Secondly, they have remote control to reset the cameras via lowering the voltage of the UPS devices and the Jackery battery backup that I bought. Right? But the most interesting thing is that how do they know that this closet isn't wired to the generator? There's only two ways they can know that. One is via daemon sacks. So Damon Sachs also lives in this neighborhood, and he is the CEO of the building company that built this neighborhood. So Liberty Homes, which is the company founded by his father, I think, was the builder of Lake Point Estates, where all these Russian and Chinese agents live, and Iranian agents, right, and Venezuelan agents, very prominent agents, by the way. So his father built it, and now he is the CEO of the company. And that company employed Penelope Suarez, who was my romantic interest, right? So it's obvious, right? So it is possible that they got the wiring of the house from Damon Sachs. And when I say they, I mean the Chinese intelligence. And that's how they know that this closet isn't wired to the generator and that they can reset it with center point. But this is interesting because if this is what happened, it would connect in the Rico enterprise center point, at least key people at center point, with Damon Sachs and the Chinese intelligence directly, right? Because they're doing this to disable the cameras to harm them. The other option is that they got this from Phil Denning, because I imagine when that generator was installed, there must have been a submission for an architectural review, because Phil Denning loves those architectural reviews, and not only Phil Denning, also the wife of Larry Ryan. She is the head of the architectural. Her name escapes me right now, but last name is Ryan, and she lives in this house close to me, right? So she lives here on the 24903 Teal Lake Court. So the wife of Larry Ryan, she is the head of the architectural review. So I imagine she got, whenever that generator was installed years ago, before I purchased the property, she and Phil Denning must have gotten a request for approval to be able to install that thing in there. And also center point, because this thing requires gas and requires electrical work touching the utility, right? So from one of these places, they must have gotten information. But I think it's only because center point is on the battery limit. Center point only has to do with the connection to the utility easement of the generator, right? So the connection of the generator to the utility easement. They don't know about the closet. The only people that would know about the wiring, the internal wiring of the house, would be Phil Denning, the wife of Larry Ryan, and by extension Larry Ryan, or Damon Sachs. Right? Those are the three people that would have possession of the wiring of this house, of this property. And obviously, one of the three gave it to the Chinese intelligence, because they have knowledge that this closet is not wired to the generator. And they're using that to disable the cameras to break into my property. Right? So it's and they use center point to actually do it, to lower the voltage, right? So it's I think it's a gold mine if you think about it, right? In terms of getting people to talk, which is the goal, I think. So with that thought, I'm gonna leave you for tonight, because it's almost 2:30 a.m. So it's probably getting a little bit on the longer side of the scale. But I'll thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Good night. Good afternoon. Today is May 5th, 2026. So it's Cinco de Mayo, 2026. And it is 2:30 p.m. US Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this video from my office located at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494. And this property, this office, is located 300 feet away from the residence of Mr. Robert Mueller, who is a former director of the FBI. And that is relevant to this conversation. So So this is the second part of the demonstration D135, which I recorded the first segment earlier this morning. And after I recorded that, I kept looking at a few things, and I understood a lot of things that are interesting. And I have to tell you, this is um, I think it's probably the second time. I mean, this is a major event. What I realized this morning. Um, and I think it's equivalent to when they leaked. I think it could be to that level of importance to when they leaked the entire database of crypto payments and properties in the world to me in 2024. And ironically, in that time, it was leaked to me by the Moleros and by this character Rodolfo Vargas, who was really a Molero, and Andres Salvador Mendez and all of them. I mean, that was in 2024 because they were harassing me with this technology tool that was a clone of Uber. But they harassed me to a point that it allowed me to see that they were using a database, a GeoIndex, and that allowed me to find it on the internet because they had to have this thing hosted on the internet. So all their phones can download it without, having, triggering suspicion on the FBI, for example. Right? They can have this database in the dark web, right, for example, because that would be suspicious. So they have to hide it in plain sight on the internet. So that's what happened in 2024. But I realized this morning that what happened yesterday, I mean, the last few days, right, with the two police officers harassing me coming, to the side of my vehicle, to the passenger side to inspect, to try to understand what is the tool that I have in there, that I had in there. I don't have it anymore, just so you know. So don't even waste your time. I'm not gonna carry it anymore. For the time. But that allowed me to understand that I mean, the fact that they triggered that, right, allowed me to understand the importance um, of Rodolfo Vargas, really, right? And the informant told me, right? But the fact that they went into such a panic to dispatch a second police officer to do exactly the same thing as on March 19 confirmed to me how important he was. And then the information about the Lamborghini and those things, it all came together. And now I understand, and I started checking this morning, and this is I like this is exactly. I know exactly what they're do, how they're doing, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. I figured it out. So this is equivalent to finding the other database, right? The database of that has the relationship targets to agents or agents to targets. Because the other database that was leaked to me on the year 2024 was about crypto payments and uh, properties and antennas and things, right? Operational points. But this is about relationships between people. This is a different database that I did not have until today. Now I have it. And it's amazing. It's interesting. Right? But before we get into the details on how this database works, uh, I want to think out loud a little bit with you about uh, the mistake, right, that they made again, like the same mistake, because it seems like a repetitive mistake that they make, and that is it's first of all it's interesting, right, to see and perhaps try to understand why they make these mistakes often, the same mistake, the exact same mistake, uh, and secondly, what is, I mean, there must be something on their structure or maybe in their culture or philosophy, like there is something systemic here at play that makes this mistake repeatable over time. And understanding what that is an important thing, right? I have to think way more about this. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is something that is causing this to be a repetitive event in time. This is not random. This is not something that happens randomly. I mean, that they make the same mistake dozens of times, because I mean these are the two major events, right? The 2024 and now the one on Cinco de Mayo, right? 2026. So the first one was on 9/11, 2024. And the second one was on Cinco de Mayo 2026, 18, 19 months after, right? 20 months after. But they have made similar mistakes in the past. Like, I mean, dozens of them. Like that's how I discovered Liana Technologies. Like that's how I discovered the attack on the Google queries. That's how I discovered the CTR attacks. Like, you know, there's been a process of years of dealing with them, and I you know, reverse engineered their technologies dozens of times. This is not the first time, right? Or this is not even the second time. So there is something systemic here, right? And I don't know the answer, right? But what I can tell you is that it feels like part of the problem is that there is a group of people that design the weapons and standardize them for them to be deployed worldwide, to be used worldwide by people that are not technically inclined necessarily, right? Like this, for example, Rodolfo Villamizar, he doesn't necessarily understand why is that the car that was assigned to him was a Lamborghini, right? He's just happy that he's driving a Lamborghini, but he doesn't know why. He doesn't know that it's because there is a recording of me driving a Lamborghini in 2012 in Cancun that was produced, designed and produced by the team of Gillian Walsh in New York, and it got uploaded and given to the Chinese intelligence, right? Like he doesn't understand those things. If he knew that, he wouldn't drive that Lamborghini, and he wouldn't, you know, he would avoid that. So it's interesting, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is that it feels like the problem here really is that the operators, and I'm telling you this because maybe other countries, even Western countries, right, that are on the receiving end of this, maybe they make the same mistake in other things, right? So I don't know. Maybe this could be helpful. I don't know. But it feels like the mistake is abusing the weapon, right? Like it's giving a weapon to an operator that doesn't understand that if they abuse the weapon, it will be reverse engineered by the other side, right? And the operator, because they're thinking on their own benefit, they try to use the weapon as much as they possibly can. And maybe they even come up with creative ways of using the weapon that were not even thought of by the designers. But these creative ways maybe were not really implemented by the designers because they carry risk, because that way of using that weapon is observable, right? For example. So I don't know. I have to think more about this, but it feels like it's the abuse of the weapon, really, the weakness, right, of this type of networks. Oh boy, yeah. So let me tell you, right? So uh, let me start by this, right? Like, let's go back to Rodolfo Vargas, right? Because that's a good anchor point, both for law enforcement, you know, investigators, DOJ, etc., and for, I imagine, right, people that study how do you call that, criminology, right? I imagine, right, this probably will become something that people will study. I mean, not what I'm saying, but the crimes that they're doing, right? So, you know, Rodolfo Vargas, I think, would be a good anchor point for both worlds because, well, you will see, right? Let me show you. So if we search again for Rodolfo Vargas, right? So you see, in this is one of the top ranking pages in Google for Rodolfo Vargas, and you have his photo, and you know this is the video of the Lamborghini, right? That in question, right? That this basically gave all this away. Um, I mean, all that I'm going to tell you. I mean, even like the things that I've already told you were given away by this, right? But the things that I found now are also going to be given away by this directly. So, you know, I think we should all take a moment of silence to thank, uh, you know, I don't know if you believe in God or not, but if you do, you know, thank your gods and thank, you know, Rodolfo Vargas and the Molero family, really, for giving us, all this knowledge, because this wouldn't have been possible without them, you know, their effort and dedication. And Diosdado Cabello, like, we also have to be thankful to Diosdado Cabello for leaking out this information to everybody. Uh, so anyhow, you see that presence, you know, when you see this video, right, in this page, you think, I mean, that this was what I thought, right? That the informant corrected me and told me this is not ego, this is design. But, you know, you see this video of him driving the Lamborghini and, you know, like the license plate is visible in the video, like, you know, his name is in the title of the video. Like, you would think it's ego, right? But it's not ego. Like, this is design. Like, this page As at the end of the previous segment, you saw that this page, I mean, we saw together that this page has keywords that are tied directly to me, that are very relevant to me. And if you score things like my resume, uh, things that I've written in newspapers or in different places about technical topics with Google's Muppet scorer of search, if you score all the things that I've written, my technical emails, my work emails, things like that, you would come up with a set of keywords, right? And you rank them by frequency, like how frequent Reynaldo types these keywords. You rank the keywords by frequency. The top, I don't know, 20 keywords are present in this page, directly or indirectly, right? Um, so these, if you, and if, by conversely, if you run the same scorer on this page, on all the text and the metadata of this page, and on that of the videos that are and images that are present on this page, you will get a very similar set of keywords. The similarity, if you compute the cosine similarity between the two sets of keywords, is going to be close to 1, which means they're very related to each other. And this is exactly the way this database that they have, again, hidden in plain sight works, is by creating web pages in Google and content in Google that allows them to infer with high precision and no ambiguity the relationship between a target and an agent, meaning how close they are, how closely related, how physically close they are, and also what is the context of the interaction. If it's a romantic interaction, if it's a work interaction. For example, the reason why they stuffed this page with the PHP keyword is because this is a work interaction. His job is not to be my lover. His job is to steal my intellectual inventions. That's the relationship of him to me. And he the way these relationships in this particular page, in this example I'm giving you, and again I have to give you again the disclaimer that I'm going to talk about personal situations of my life, but it's because that's the only thing that I have context about, right? And that's how I can see the things, because I have the technical knowledge to understand what they're doing, and also have the background context on my own experiences of all my life, personal experiences, right? And I can see how they stuff these pages with keywords that are relevant to me. And this is what makes this weapon so insidious, because it means that only the target can see it. If I go to the FBI and tell them all this, like I imagine, right, after recording 135 declarations, right, as I've done with this one, and if I count the hours, right, it would be in the probably more than 1,000 hours. I don't know, 500 hours. I don't know exactly, right? But it's going to be hundreds of hours. I imagine after, with all that I'm shown, that they will believe me, right? That they will, at least give this a look. But if I'm a random person, right, that never worked at Google and comes up with this allegation, any FBI agent will think that person is crazy. Right? But because I have the knowledge and I have the context of my own experiences, I can see what they're doing. Right? But this means also that only a very small set of people in the world can see this. It would have to be people that worked at Google specifically, and it would have to be people that are aware that they're being harassed with this technology. So it's a very small, narrow set of people. Right? So it's like very hard to find a person that can see this. And this is what makes this weapon so effective and so insidious. So anyhow, what I was telling you is that if you score the keywords on this page, it will tell you that he's related to me by work and that he has an indirect relationship, romantic, to me because of the sister. And that is encoded in the fact that the wife is called Cecilia Vargas, right? And Vargas is the last name of a former girlfriend that I had in Montreal. And that word is put in the title. And the fact that it's in the title gives that keyword a lot of weight. So this is signifying to the scorer, in a way, I mean, the placement of Vargas in the title, that the Vargas is a very important thing. And when they score my keywords, they understand that it's important because it's in the girlfriends or romantic interest section in the index, right? In their Bizarro index of Google, in their Bizarro version of the Google index is what I mean. So that so what I'm describing is the mechanics on how the relationships are encoded. So this is the reason why for key agents, they have to create these public web pages, right? Because the web pages on themselves is what encodes the relationship. It's the database. This web page is really a database role that says this guy is a harasser of Reynaldo Aguilar, and he has an indirect relationship to him via a romantic link. And there are other web pages of other people that contain other roles that are related to me. And there are other web pages that contain other roles that are related to other targets. That, of course, those I cannot understand because I don't have the context of those targets. I don't know their experiences, right? I don't know if they like if they drove sometime a red Ferrari, right? But it's possible that if somebody has that experience and is a target, there will be a page equivalent to this, but with a red Ferrari. You see, to mark who is the brother of the romantic interest that is harassing this person, right? With the courts and kidnapping the children and all that. It's standardized. This is a standardized. Uh, so let me give you an example, right? So let me give you. So I started by the most granular thing. I started by showing you how they encode a row. This is like a row in Excel, in an Excel sheet, really. This web page that you're seeing, right? And as you can see, they created multiple web pages in LinkedIn, like with the same thing, like, co-founder of the PHP agency. You see, the PHP keyword is present a lot of times in these pages, right? Like you can see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, more than 20 times in a single 16 times. Sorry, 16 times in just a set of 10 results. Imagine that, right? So this is, all these pages are stuffed with keywords in this way. And this is to increase the topicality of the Google Knowledge Graph entity of him for the keyword PHP. So they're really doing this with the knowledge graph of Google, right? But because they're doing it with the knowledge graph of Google, which is the main weapon of attack of Liana Technologies, the side effect, what you're seeing really here is a side effect, that these pages rank high in Google search because they increase the topicality of the entity that represents him in the knowledge graph. So the real weapon of attack is the knowledge graph, really. But as a side effect that leaks and is visible, this happens, and then I can see it, you see? So this is how they encoded rows, by stuffing keywords into the knowledge graph entity, really, via injecting keywords in websites and videos and things like that. But now I'm going to show you something more interesting, right? I'm going to show you a trick. I'm not going to tell you how it works yet, but I'm going to show you a trick that it's something that anybody can do. So you can go to, let's do this example, okay? Let's go to images.google.com. Okay? And this has a feature, which is you can click on this icon that is a photo, and you can. I'm just showing you a feature of Google, right? You may be aware of this, you may not, but I'm going to show it to you just in case you're not aware. You can upload a file, and I'm going to upload a file. I have some files stored in my. I haven't tested this because I don't want them to modify them, right? But I have some files that I saved, so I'm gonna test it, right, and see what happens. So let's start with this. Right? Right. So if you click on visual matches, right, then you can see photos that look similar, right? Let's do another example. Let's do Paul. So I have a photo of Paul. Paul is somewhere over here. Right? This is better because it's only one person, right? Maybe it will find. Yes, it found it, right? So it finds that this is a photo that is present in this website. Now, this website, if you open it, it will take you to Reynaldo Medina photography. Now, note the Reynaldo. That is very important, right? And you can see that in the URL, reynaldomedina.com. Now, Reynaldo has my own name, Reynaldo, right? It's a full match on my first name. This is very contextual to me, right? And this Reynaldo photography person is here in Houston. And he is my photographer. Like, he was introduced to me by Suleiman Molero Villamizar, formerly known as Gloria Espina. And he came to my home to take photos of, like, for example, a work portrait for work, right? To put it in my profile at work. Or he wants to take photos of the baby when the baby was 1 year old, right? Things like that. He would take our family photos in December, right? And he has my first name. I always thought, what a coincidence, right? That my photographer has my first name. But now I understand it's not a coincidence. This is design, right? So you see, what they do, and now I'm going to jump into this, right? What they do is that this thing of creating web pages is so standardized. I mean, the Lamborghini example is just one implementation of this technique, but there are many other implementations. And one notable one is the photographers. So and there's many of these photographers like Ronaldo Medina. Imagine every target has a photographer, right? And the idea is, in this page of the photographer, they have the important agents categorized by vertical in what is their role. So for example, in the fitness category, there is Gloria Spina, which you can see her in a photo here. Bree Hardy is also here. Oh, they already removed Bree, I think. Yeah, so this one on the left is Bree Hardy, right? This one, which is the director of the Villa Sport complex, which they used to have her meet with Andres Salvador Mendez using the house that is on the back, on the Bank Court Street. Like if you're an investigator, you probably know already about this, right? So they have a house. Let me show you. They have a house behind the Villa Sport in Cary. Right, so this is the Villa Sport where Bree works, right? She's a director of sports. And they have this house on the back that has a direct line of sight to the studios, to the windows of the studio where Suleima Villamizar takes the Zumba classes, right? So this allows them to communicate visually, to place things on that backyard to signify things, for example. And it also allows, so what they do is that Andres Salvador Mendez comes to this house. I mean, before I imagine she would go to that house, right? And it's an easy, it's a short distance, it's under surveillance, and it's safe. But under these circumstances, what they would do, they would have Andres Salvador Mendez walk from the backyard on this green space and then come on the back to the Villa Sport, and that way they can meet, right? Because they have the Villa Sport complete. The Villa Sport is an operational base of the Iranians, like that is heavily controlled, right? So that's how they meet. That's why she is on this stage of conflict, where the conflict, I mean, not with me, but between these countries that are trying to get rid of me, right? And she still meets with him is because they meet on that control environment, using that house as a jump point for him. But anyhow, that's pretty hard, right? But going back to the topic of Ronaldo Medina, so what they do with the photographers, right, is that it gives them an opportunity to place the important agents in these pages, and then they're categorized, right? So in this page, there is Paul, who is Bree Hardy's boyfriend, supposedly, right? Imagine he's really husband, but they portrayed him as a boyfriend, and he was the owner of the first gym where I met Bree Hardy and the Kilpatrick, Ross Daniel Kilpatrick, for the first time in my life in 2015, sorry. So they first had a small gym, but when they escalated things, they built the Villa Sport, like in 2018 or something like that. When they saw that I was able to produce technology worth stealing, I imagine, right? They escalated the setup for her to make it more secure. And this is around the time when she started going to Reynaldo's photography to take these photos. And the reason why they needed to take these photos with her was to place her in this page, to mark the other agents that are working on her team, like Bree Hardy. I'm surprised that Ross Kilpatrick is not in this page. Maybe he is, and I haven't seen him, right? But what I can tell you is that Paul is more important than Ross Kilpatrick for this little project that they have. And Bree Hardy is obviously very important, because otherwise they wouldn't be in this page. Now, Jenny Espina, who supposedly is the sister of Gloria Espina, who is really Zuleima Villamizar Molero, is also on this page. It's this person over here, but I'm pretty sure that's not really the sister, right? For many reasons, but she's close to her, but she's not really the sister. But anyhow, so you see, this gives this network, I mean, this thing with the photographers, right, an opportunity to place important people in categories, right? So this is the fitness category, right? They have another category. called, for example, corporate, right? And in this category, I recognize people that, for example, there is a photo that I don't know if it's exactly him, but if it's not him, it looks very much like him. It could be Crespo, right? Juan Antonio Crespo, I think is his name. This guy, right? I mean, it's identical, right? Maybe it's not him really the photo, but it's identical, and that's enough because the goal of this photo is not to really to identify the agent. It's really to give a computer model that they use afterwards the features, right? So if this photo resolves in that, if you upload this photo to an equivalent of the images of google.com that I showed you 5 minutes ago, and it resolves to Juan Crespo, that is enough, right? It doesn't really have to be the person. It has to be a person that looks alike. So the theory is that what they're doing is that they have an image classifier very similar to the image of google.com, but that has been trained not on the public internet, but on the set of their agents. And they're running that thing in parallel, privately. It's not exposed to the world, it's exposed only to their systems. Or maybe it's exposed to the world, but it's not advertised, right? And then what they do is that when they want to identify an agent, for example, if Gloria Espina or Suleiman Villamizar passes in front of one of these surveillance cameras of the car takes a photo, right? And that photo ends up being executed against the Google classifier and the private classifier that they have, the secret one, right? And only the real agents will be present in the two sets. So she will be present in the Reynaldo Medina set, right? It will resolve to this page that I just showed you, where her photo in the fitness photos is present, right? And then when they run it against the second classifier, which is the secret one, she will resolve to her real name or to a code name or whatever, right? But she will resolve to something, high precision. And that is a signal, I mean, the co-occurrence of the presence of the same image of the same person, the same likeliness of the same person being present in the two data sets signifies that this is an agent. And not only that, it automatically tells their system that this agent is related to Reynaldo Medina. And they know because of the first name match that Reynaldo Medina is the marker for Reynaldo Aguiar-Marcano. He is the bizarro Reynaldo Aguiar-Marcano in a way, right? Because he's in Houston, he's called Reynaldo, and their system is informed of this. So the only relationship that they really need to store is the relationship between Medina and Aguiar. They need somewhere to store that Medina in Houston signifies Aguiar-Marcano or Medina photography, right? And that's enough. With that, and the setup of that website that they have with Reynaldo Medina, it's enough to resolve the identities, the relationships, and the roles of hundreds of agents if necessary. They don't need to have anything else because they have the agents already categorized by categories in this photography website, right? Now, in this corporate, at the bottom, there's a character that is interesting that I think is somebody important. It's this character over here. And I'm not going to give much details of why and how I know this, but I think this person is important. He's an important player in this thing. Now, and they put the other stock photos to create noise, right? So I mean, if you don't know what to look for, I know because I know the context. I know Bree, I know Paul, I know. Now on Paul, I have to tell you, I've seen Paul in person like 4 times in my life. One of the times was the last time when things escalated. After I captured the database, they organized a funeral for the father of Bree. And I have to tell you, right? I thought about saying this multiple times before, and I've never said it out of respect for the dead. I don't know if the man is really dead, right? And if he is, I would feel bad if he is, and I say this, right? But seeing all this deception and that this is really a network based on confidence and schemes, really, it occurred to me that maybe her father is not really dead. Maybe he is an important FSB agent, and they, to protect him, they faked that funeral. It's possible, but they created a funeral in 2024 for her father, and they invited me to that funeral. I've never been close to Bree or to any of them, but they made the point of asking supposedly Gloria Spina to accompany her to the funeral. The funeral was closed casket, I think it's called casket, I don't know. And so I could not see the face of the dead, right? I just saw something there. And Bree was crying, so maybe it was real, but maybe it was not. I don't know, right? But given that I had just captured the database, that I see that Brie is marked in this page of Ronaldo Medina as a central figure, put in the same photo as Suleima Villamizar. Like they're sharing the frame, right? So that's how important she is to this project. Um, you know, it makes me wonder, right? And because I know this network is maintained by the secrecy given or the loyalty really given by family relationships, and they made the decision to, organize that funeral for the father and invite me. I imagine it's possible, right? That it wasn't a real funeral. It was just an act to make me believe that person is out of the picture, right? So I would never even try to look for him, right? Uh, so it's possible, right? Now I have to tell you, there's more things in here. Senior, I would recommend authorities looking into this. I imagine, I mean, I'm not going to show it because it could be minors, and I don't want to put minors in here. But it's possible that it's a way for them. It would be a very secure way of marking prominent agents by placing their children in this page, because precisely they're minors. Even if a whistleblower like me figures this out, if they show the minor, then they will get in trouble. They will sue them for posting the minor's images on the internet, right? Um, but because the system has they have ingested and indexed all the Facebook and Instagram and Twitter feeds, they know what the kid looks like, and they know that the because you marking people marking Facebook, this is my dad, right, and this is my mom, so they know the relationship of that. So by identifying the kid, they can identify the parent, right? So I suspect the senior tab is important. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be there, right? They would have put something else. Um, but you see, it's a way of now. This is a visual database, really, right? So this is a database in which every row is really an image and a relationship because it's categorized by vertical. Weddings or romantic interests, right? So if you go to weddings, I imagine there's people in there that are tied. The husband of probably the husband of Ibeth Escobar could possibly be there, for example, to give an idea, right? Things like that. But there was one thing that really concerned me. So there is a tab, okay, that is called food or something like that. Yes, this tab over here, food. If you click on that tab, and I'm telling you this to investigators so they can check this. If you click on the tab, you will see all the food items that I personally love. Like these are things that I would not, I mean, all these photos, like the lasagna, like, the iced tea, like these are things that at some point in my life, I would have said, I mean, not at this moment, because at this moment, because of the situation, I cannot eat any of this because they would help me with the food. But at some point in my life, each one of these items, I would have said at some point in my life that I was addicted to them. Like I couldn't stop eating them. Right, each one of them, uh, without exception. There is not one item in this list of images that belongs to a thing that I have not been addicted to over the course of my life. So this is concerning because what this could be a map on how to assassinate the target, right? Like if you need to guess, which food item you need to contaminate to harm me, this is the perfect map. This is what I'm trying to say, right? Now, this is dangerous for Ronaldo Medina because he is participating in the creation of this website, right? And his identity is known and is prominent. Like he's an official sponsor of the Miss Houston beauty contest. So he cannot disappear like that, right? And he has relationship, as you can see, to all these agents because he has personally photographed them. He came to my house dozens of times, not only to photograph. And this is interesting. This is amazing. I just understood something. In many of these occasions that he came to my home to photograph, so at the beginning it started with him photographing Zuleima Villamizar, okay, or Gloria Espina. I knew her by that name. But then the dynamic changed, and she wasn't in the photos anymore. But Reynaldo would tell us that he loved the house. Like the house was beautiful and he liked the pool and it was the perfect place to take photos. And he would bring women to the house to take photos in the pool, right? So I mean, please don't laugh at me. Don't take this the wrong way. But I wasn't opposed to the idea. I mean, I'm a guy. Like, if somebody tells me I'm gonna bring a group of models to your home to take photos of them in bathing suit, I'm going to agree. And I look, I look. Sorry for laughing. It's just that it's too funny, right? The first time this happened, right? To be honest, the first time this happened, I mean, when Reynaldo proposed this setup in front of Gloria Espina, I look at her because I didn't know what her reaction would be. Like, if I acted too happy, she could. I thought she would get upset. Like she could get jealous. She could. I don't know. She could feel insecure. I don't know, right? So I was respectful and mindful of, her. So I didn't know how to react, right? So I look at her, and her response was, "That is a great idea, Reynaldo." And that way, the other Reynaldo, can have something to distract his eyes with. Like he can have something to look at, because it's good to have beautiful things to look at. She made a comment like that. So she was encouraging me to look at the women, which, to be honest, I thought it was strange, right? The first time this happened. But, I thought, well, maybe she is just open-minded. I'm nobody to judge. And, if this is, if this, sorry, I'm sorry for laughing, but I was so naive, right? That is just funny. Uh, eh, I thought at the time, right, when this happened the first time, I thought, well, if these are the cards that I'm dealt, I'm nobody to change the game. So I have to just deal with it, right? So I said, yes, of course, let's do this, right? And I would I would even help Ronaldo with the equipment and like setting up the equipment so to make sure that that things went smoothly. But sorry for it's just laughing, the level of innocence that I had, right? Of course, I imagine they were hoping that I would get involved with one of the models, right? Because those models are agents. Now, this is what I just understood. This thing of bringing them to my home is not random. It is because in the metadata of the camera of Ronaldo, it encodes the GPS location. So in those photos that are posted in there, in the metadata, there's also information that this photo was taken at Reynaldo Aguiar Marcano's home, right? And that is an important linkage because who can get access to Reynaldo Aguiar's home? Somebody that Reynaldo Aguiar trusts, right? So this gives immediately a level of context and level of trust and closeness, physical closeness to the target that is recorded in a digital metadata that is impossible to see with the naked eye. This is why they brought these people to my home. There was a notable incident in which they brought a second photographer. So Reynaldo was taking photos of one model, and they brought another model, and Gloria was in the photo shoot, right? And this guy was taking photos of Gloria. So I think the fact that he took the photos of Gloria with his camera, I imagine the serial number of the camera could also be recorded in those. I don't know. I don't know if the EXIF metadata has the serial number, but it could have, for example, things like could fingerprint the camera, like the model, the length, that combination of setup could be a fingerprint that would signify that person. And that could mean this person is related to Gloria Espina in some capacity, right? I don't know what is the capacity, but I think that interaction is not random because they brought that guy to do that at my home, right? And to take photos of her specifically. So, but you see, it's a way of storing on a public website a lot of information that is visual, contextual. It encodes information about relationships, closeness, metadata, right? And it's in plain sight. They don't have to have a secret database anywhere. And then what they do is that with this website, because it's going to get ingested into Google, the Google classifier is going to be contaminated in a way with these relationships, right? So when they do a search on the image search, their system will get Reynaldo Medina. And that is the resolution they need. After that point, it's done because then all they have to do is run the images of that website that match the likeness of the person against the other classifier that they have secretly. And that will tell them this is Brie Hartley. right? And that makes the system understand that Brie Hardy is related closely to Gloria Espina, who is really Suleima Molero Villamizar, and that she is harassing Reinaldo Aguilar. Like her goal is to, destroy Reinaldo Aguilar. And all this is encoded without putting one line in one database. You see, it's exploiting. Well, I mean, they have to have this bizarro version somewhere, right? And this brings me to another point. In the previous segment, when I said, they're probably scoring these web pages, I thought that I said something like this called Muppet, okay? But you see, like these systems that I'm describing, the image classifiers, the image search. I mean, the infrastructure. I'm telling you this as a Google search ranking engineer that worked in that for almost a decade, 9 years. I don't know. I know the level of sophistication of that stack and the level of the infrastructure. In the terms of engineers, I'm a rare breed because I know about ranking, but I know a lot about infrastructure, and that is not common. Like usually, and it's not because I'm smart. It's because they move me around in all these teams, and I learn, right? But this is normally what happens in the life of a Google engineer. Usually, they get dedicated to one area. They either work in ranking, or they work in infrastructure, or they work in front end, or they work on something else. But because they were stealing my inventions, they tour me across the entire company, right? The entire search team. So I learned about all these topics. And I have to tell you, the level of infrastructure required to run these systems is immense. This is not something that you can steal the code in a pen drive and run it in your computer. You need a data center to run this, right? To run just the image classifier, because it's a distributed system that requires hundreds, if not thousands of computers. Actually, not hundreds, thousands of computers just for one instance of Muppet, right? You need 1,000 containers to run one instance of Muppet, right? And these numbers I'm telling you is from 2018. Like, it's probably more at this point. Anyhow, I'm telling you this because seeing that they're encoding information with these websites as well makes me understand that it's not like they stole the code. I mean, yes, they stole the code, but they have to be running these on Google data centers, and they need to keep this code up to date with the new releases of the new features of Google. So this made me think that maybe what they're doing is really they have a secret parallel Google inside Google. They have a company inside a company, right? So they have a parallel Google inside of Google that is running a dedicated data center, or a dedicated segment of the data center, or I don't know exactly the infrastructure split, right? But this is something more systemic. This is not something that they stole the code, took it to China, and are running them secretly in China. Like, this is not, I don't think this is what happened. Looking at this, it's obvious to me that they must be running this inside of Google. So the level of participation of Google in this is high. It's not, Here, I'm going to go on a limb and guess. If I was to guess, I would guess this is happening in the Switzerland data center or in the Netherlands data center. The Switzerland, because they took me there 3 times to, quote unquote, work on projects, right? They wanted to steal my inventions in a way that was not traceable, right? That's why they took me specifically to Switzerland for weeks at a time, right? And so I think they wanted to give the inventions to an entity outside of Google, right? Outside of the perimeter. And, the easiest way was to bring me there, right? And to have me, because I would connect my computer to in the hotel or things like that, that would be outside of the network perimeter of Google. So it wouldn't be traceable. And they could still steal it with the actual people working on this project on the Netherlands, right? On Switzerland. And the Netherlands, because nanotechnology is there, right? So if there is a data center of Google, in fact, let's do this investigation right now. Let's see in Gemini if Google have a data center in Finland or the Netherlands, physically close to a data center of nanotechnology. The physically close is important because, as we learned through this process, the more distance, the more hops, the more risks of interception by authorities. So they can't be doing this at transatlantic, right? Yes, there is a very direct physical proximity between two, primarily because Technologies actually uses Google data centers to host some of its services alongside. Okay, Finland. Yeah, Google has a massive data center in Hamina, Finland, which is Europe North One. So that's probably, if I was a betting man, I would guess this parallel Google is around there. And the Netherlands, Europe West, right? And these would be things, and also these would be things outside of the jurisdiction of the US. So they can create a subpoena to go and see what is at the wrong, right? Well, that's what they think. I imagine, you know, probably the US, when this inevitably reaches authorities, they will use diplomatic channels to, you know, uh, get them there, right? I imagine, right? Piracy law, right? Like there's pirates have no country, so therefore they should be treated as such. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is probably what they're doing, right? Collocation, um, and then with a small level of collaboration, they can probably. I have to think about this, like how I would do it. But there's ways to do this without breaking the law, like technically breaking the law, right? Like without putting an external entity's controlled server inside of Google. Like there's ways to do this. But it's interesting, right? So now let me move on from that. And I found other examples, like for example, Alvin Canturamina, who is the romantic partner of Penelope Suarez, who was my romantic interest, right? I mean, he is the equivalent of Andres Salvador Mendez, but on the Penelope Suarez side. If you look for his name, uh, Houston, you see, there's a lot of pages that talk about him. So he has sort of a public profile, okay? And this one is interesting, for example, because if you do this analysis that I mentioned before of counting the keywords and ranking them by frequency and comparing that to my profile, to my index, right, that they would have of me, the keywords match close to 1% cosine similarity. So he have, and these, he talks about things like, leadership because of key opinion leaders, right? It talks about nursing because Penelope is a nurse. Um, like it's a stuff with keywords that are very topical to me. It's the same technique, right? So this is the reason why I always thought to myself, well, if this is an intelligence network and they're so secretive, how they allow these targets to have these public web pages? I mean, it's like saying that, so like the CIA would allow a CIA operative to create a Facebook page when they're operating in Afghanistan, right? It would be crazy, like the person could be killed, right? The reason is because is the web page the topicality link in the business in search engines. We call that topicality. This thing that I'm describing of the keywords and ranking them and grouping them together is called topicality. It's a topicality computation. So the main technology to make the link between targets and harassers really is Google topicality computation, which is what the Moped scorer computes. So you see, it's obvious that what they're doing is that they have a bizarro version of Google to attack all the targets, right? It's the same thing that they did with Uber. They have Uber, which is driving passengers around, but they also have a weaponized version of Uber that is driving spies around, right? Guiding them to intercept targets to steal their data. So it's the same pattern. And I think this is at the end the pattern of racketeering is the weaponization of benign technologies at massive scale to attack everybody and undermine democracy in countries that are still democratic, um, and try to turn them into communist countries. Um, I think that's really if I can give you a one-liner, that's what it would be. Yes. So let me check my. But like I hope that I'm doing a good job at conveying how important this discovery is. I mean, I think this is better than getting the database leakage on 2024, because this has the identity of agents that are important, like Rodolfo Vargas, that they can't erase. Right? I mean, these are the agents that they can't get rid of. And let me give you the best part. Authorities can use this to find the targets. How? It's easy. All you have to do is get my key opinion leaders database, because my key opinion leaders technology, with the Chinese were concentrated in stealing for years, does exactly this. It produces a list of keywords for anybody in the world. And I'm not going to get into details how I did it, but like, it has millions of people in that database, and it's hosted in Google. Like, all you have to do is find people that are prominent, and I derive these keywords from the research papers that like white papers and scientific papers, right? Um, so all you have to do is get the keywords from key opinion leaders for important people, people that are in Congress, people that are judges, people that are in the DOJ, people that are doctors, like things like that, people that are prominent, right? You could find the keywords that are relevant to them by going by the things that they've written that are public, right? That's what key opinion leaders will give you. After you have those keywords, what you have to do is expand, take the 10 top keywords for a person, for example, and with that you can build a Google query. Like, for example, if you do, let's do my example, right? If you look myself in key opinion leaders, you will find PHP, Python. You will find things like SLK, right? You will find things like Google, search, AI, right? Machine learning, things like that. You take those keywords and you do a search for those keywords in Houston. You would get, in the top 100 results, you would get Rodolfo Vargas, because he has PHP, he has, he has things that are, he has ND, he has things that are important to me. He will rank high, and then you would have identified Rodolfo Vargas that way. So what you have to do is find important, like identify people that are important for government, for democracy, really, right? Find them first. That's the first stage. Then find the keywords for each one of them in key opinion leaders, and then construct the Google query that has the top 10 keywords and the city where they live. Because you see, you have to put the city to restrict the set of results. That's why I put Alvin Cantero, Mina, Houston, or Reynaldo Medina, Houston, because they're not silly, right? The Diana Technologies probably created to create confusion, right? Created other pages for Reynaldo Medina in other cities, right? So if for example, in Washington. So if somebody from the DOJ in Washington is looking for Reynaldo Medina, they will come up with the Reynaldo Medina in Washington, not the one in Houston, right? But you have to localize this to the target's location in the query that you do. Once you do this, take the top 100 results and concentrate on people that have these conditions. One, they have a knowledge graph entity created in the knowledge graph of Google. And second, that knowledge graph entity is physically located or tied to the physical location where the target lives. Like, for example, Rodolfo Vargas. His entity is located in Houston, right? Where I have a house. So probably Rodolfo Vargas is the only one in the top 100 results that meets these two characteristics, and that gives you Rodolfo Vargas, right? That's the giveaway. It would also work with Ronaldo Medina. It would also work with Alvin Cantero Mina, because of Penelope, the Norse, and all those keywords, right? Leaders is the keyword that ties him to me, because he's in the medical field and I'm not in the medical field. But my company, Key Opinion Leaders, is in the medical field. So that's why they put all those medical keywords in his page and put the word leaders a lot of times in that page to increase the topicality for key opinion leaders and medical topics that would make it rank for my entity on their side, on their Pizarro Google. You see? So what I'm telling you is I'm giving you basically not only the algorithm, but I'm also giving you the data. Because the data is free. I'll give it to the authorities, right? I don't care. So you have the data and you have the algorithm on how to find the harassers of everybody at planet scale. So this is civilization. This is better than the database that was leaked to me in 2024, because yes, that has the crypto payments that can be recovered and the money can be, taken away from them. But this gives identities, which is even better, because they may have other assets hidden in, I don't know, other things, gold or things that are not, crypto. Right? So anyhow, I think this is it's a it's a good one. I hope that this helps everybody. So with this thought, I'm gonna close this demo. I'm gonna think more about this because there's more gold in this mine to be mined. And I'm gonna keep thinking about this thing. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Mm. It's okay, Papa. Good afternoon. Good evening. Today is May 7th, 2025, and it is 9 p.m. US Central Time. I am recording this from my office at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this property is located 300 feet away from the residence of Mr. Robert Mueller, who is a former director of the FBI, and that is relevant to this conversation. So this is the third part of the Declaration 135. Um, and this is it's going to be a technical session, as the previous two segments. It's just a few things that I realized after I recorded the last segment, because after I record them, I usually listen to them multiple times, kind of, I don't know, to do kind of QA on the ideas, right? And as I was doing that, I realized a couple of things that I think are important to mention, in case somebody is looking into this. So it's going to be technical, and the things I'm going to say on this segment require that you listen to the previous segment, specifically the second segment, the second part, because most of these things are derived from that. So for you to understand what I'm going to say, you need to listen to that first. Mm. So let me start with an errata. Okay. So there's something I said in the second part that is inaccurate. I said something to the effects that um, I was talking about, how about the photography website, the Ronaldo Medina example, right? That case study. And I said something to the effects that what they're probably doing is doing an image search, uploading a snapshot taken with one of their cameras. Could be a camera, one of the cameras of the vehicles, could be one of the cameras of the phone, doesn't matter, right? But the image gets sent to this distributed system, which is basically a copy or a clone of Google search. In fact, this first step, they do it on Google search, on the even on the public one, right? Probably not, probably they don't do it because they wouldn't want that to be logged, right? Because then authorities could go and subpoena the logs of the searches, and they would figure out who are the agents, right? So they probably do it on their own private instance, right? But on top of the real Google index. So they have a copy of the real index, and but the serving stack is a separate stack that gets logged in the Netherlands or Finland, right? Not in the US. Um, so they do the image search first, right? With a snapshot of the person that they photographed, by automated means. Like the agent doesn't have to take an action. All they have to do is walk next to the target with the phone pointing at the target, right? Or next to the shopping basket when they're shopping for groceries, and the system automatically recognizes that he's buying, coffee and Coca-Cola, and and then they go and switch that. Um, so anyhow, I said something to the effect that on the first step they do the search with the snapshot that they take, and that resolved to something like in the case study that I was analyzing on the previous segment, like the photography website of Reynaldo Medina, right? And I said that is enough because all they need to do after that point is to have somewhere a database that has only one row that signifies that, I mean, one row per target photographer pair, right? Um, that signifies that Reynaldo Medina is the photographer of Reynaldo Aguiar. So, Reynaldo Medina is the Pizarro Reynaldo Aguiar. I said that, right? That they would have that relationship stored somewhere, but that is not true. That's the rat I want to give you. That is not even necessary. So, I started when I listened to that after the fact. I realized, well, it would be really silly to go through all this trouble to create this system without employing a relational database that could be captured, seized, whatever, right? And then go and create this relationship somewhere in a physical file or whatever, right? But that could be captured, and that would be proof that they're harassing this person, right? So you see, they're probably not doing it that way, right? So that got me thinking, and um, uh, I don't know how to frame this, right? To be honest, I when I thought of this, it felt weird to me, unbelievable, really. But I think this is what they're doing. Um, so let's put a pin on that for a second, okay? I want to show you something first. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. So I'm gonna go to google.com and I'm gonna search for my name, Rinaldo Aguiar Marcano, patents and social graph. You will find this patent. Oh, it's not this one. This one. Method for building, expanding, or complementing a social graph based on contact information. And I don't know if you can see the. No, I cannot see it there. Let me see. Yes, here's the patent. So this is a patent application. I mean, this is an actual patent. It was granted like 10 years ago. It was granted to Google, and I am the sole inventor in this patent. Okay. And you can read you can read the patent. Like the file is downloadable here or here. Right. You can see that this was the inventor is me, Reynaldo Javier Aguilar Marcano. At that time, I was living in Santa Clara, California, and the assignee of the patent is Google Inc. in Mountain View. Right. And you can read the patent; it's all there, right? So this is an actual patent that was granted to Google. Now, let's not read that. I'm just showing you this to show you that I created this, right? That I invented this idea that I'm going to tell you. The idea is the following, right? The idea is that if you have a social graph, like for example Facebook, right, or whatever, so a social network, you can um, uh, identify people by looking at their contact information in their phone. This is a foundational idea, right? You can extend this to other things, but um, the idea is, imagine that you look at your contact list in your phone, right? You will have things like mom, dad, right? Some names that many people will have the same names, right? Because many people call their mom mom, and many people call their dad dad, right? But you will have things like Dr. Broussard, accountant Howard Leeds, you know, Ana Codalo. Like you will have specific people, right? So that set of people identifies you because you are probably the only person that have that specific set of people. Even your close relatives or your close friends, they will have some overlap, right? But the set of people itself as a whole identifies you. Like if somebody shows me, or not shows me, but like if somebody shows, if somebody gets possession of your contact list, they could know that that is you, even if your name or your phone number is not attached to any of that, just by looking at the names in the contact list. The same with the phone numbers. If you give somebody the list of the phone numbers in your contact list, that thing is a fingerprint that allows to identify you, even if you remove the names of that are attached to each phone number. But just that sequence, I mean, and it doesn't have to be the full list, just a few of of the phone numbers, because they will not co-occur in any other contact list. I don't know. I did some mathematics on how many contacts you need to be able to produce a reliable fingerprint. But anyhow, that's the invention, right? So uh, now let's go back to the previous conversation. Right? When we're talking about the whether they need to have this relationship between Reynaldo Medina, the photographer, and Reynaldo Gianmarcano, the engineer, stored somewhere. The answer is no, because if you go to Reynaldo Medina's website, Reynaldo Medina, right? So and you click on, for example, fitness, right? So I mean, there's a lot of images here that don't apply to me, right? But here you have Paul, you have Gloria Spina, you have Jenny Spina, you have Bree Hardy, and you have um, uh, what's her name? Rosanna Finol is also in this page, right? So those five people that are on Reynaldo's Medina website on this page are also in my contact list in my phone. You see? So this fingerprints me and makes the fingerprint of Reynaldo Medina match my fingerprint. So this is really how they are starting that relationship. I mean, the relationship that he's the Bizarro Reynaldo is this contact page, because there's multiple people in this page that are also in my contact list. Gloria Spina is in my contact list. Jenny Spina is in my contact list. Paul, well, here I'm going to tell you what I think they're doing, because remember, we talked about that they have the index of targets and the index, I mean, on the private version of the Pizarro version of Google, right? They have probably an index of targets and an index of um, agents, right? So I think they're not really doing it with the contact list, but they're doing it with the agents that I have encountered physically, personally. So the index, in the index of the document that represents me, the target, in the Bizarro index, they have indexed all the agents that I have met personally face to face. And so there will be Gloria Spina, there's Jenny, there's Rosana Finol. I've met her since Venezuela. Paul, I've met him 4 times in my life. Bree, I've met her more or less 5, 6 times in my life. Right? So that would be my contact list. Right? That would be the equivalent to my contact list. So they have this version of contact list that is not really a phone contact list, is the agents that you have met in person, right? That you have physically been in the same space as them. They fingerprint people based on that, and then when they want to start a relationship, they create this page, right? So this page has a double purpose: is to identify the agents, so the system knows that they're in the same team, they're working on the same target. But at the same time, the presence, the co-occurrence of this specific set of agents that are also agents that I have met physically, personally, makes our fingerprints match. But when I realized this, of course, the thought came into my mind is, well, basically what happened is that they're using that invention. But this is interesting because that invention belongs to Google. I mean, Google is the owner, right? I mean, the legal owner of the invention. I'm the inventor, but the patent belongs to Google. But they are using it. So it kind of confirms what I told you at the end of the previous segment, that the level of involvement is high, right? because they're directly using this technology for this, right? To match uh, photographers to targets, so that that higher level link is made without having to store that relationship anywhere. It's made by storing this fingerprint. Um, so that um, I think that, I mean, that confirms that part and also explains a lot to me, right? Like why why they kept me in this situation for so long. I think it's because they had such good success stealing those two things specifically, right? So the entity nafus idea, stealing, I mean, not stealing it, like using it from Google, right? Getting it from Google, and then, but those were my inventions, right? So they saw tremendous success with those two ideas, the entity nav boost and the fingerprinted based on contact information that I showed you. Like, I'm the inventor of that, right? I mean, the entity nav boost, I cannot prove it to you because this was a conversation I had with Majur while I was in the apartment of Gloria Espina in 2014 in Katy, Texas. But it wasn't patented, right? So you have to take my word for it. But in this case, this other thing is patented. Like you can see that my name is in that patent as the inventor. So what I imagine happened is that they saw good success with those two things. They saw that they could do these things, for example, right? And they thought, we're going to hang on to this guy, right? We're not going to. I mean, maybe that kept me alive, right? Maybe otherwise I wouldn't be here, right? I don't know. Anyhow, now speaking of that patent, when I filed that application, something kind of strange happened. I mean, it's anecdotal, but I'm going to tell you. I started receiving uh, interview invitations from Facebook. They interviewed me like multiple people. There was a guy by the last name Bradshaw, I think is his last name. But like those were those interviews where they wanted to gather information. Um, they wanted to gather information, but they didn't really never make me. They never made me an offer. It's the same technique of that Amazon, right? Like Amazon interviewed me multiple times, but it was just intelligence gathering, like see what they could get, but it wasn't really a real, job opportunity. But this happened immediately after I filed that patent application, um, which is strange, right? Yeah, Bradshaw. Which, by the way, Bradshaw is the last name that they used in the registration of one of the houses of the Moleros. It's the same. They use the same last name. Bradshaw is that guy from Facebook. The familiar. This is because they indexed that interaction with him because he's an agent, right? Bradshaw, right? Um, and then that that created that one of those registrations. I mean, the side effect of that is that one of those registrations ended up having his last name. Right? And maybe this is a good point to talk about. Sorry, I have my talking points written down here. Let me see. Yeah, so just to close the idea on the thing about this page, right, with the images. It is also a contact list, basically. Right? Now, I another thing that is that I remember regarding photos and images, right, is that over the last few years, right, this group of people that were posing as my friends, for example, right, we would do things like have a cards game once a week or once every 2 weeks, things like that. And I remember that every time we met to play cards or whatever, they always wanted to take a photo with me, right? And to be honest, it felt a little bit weird because I don't know, like, we're all grown men, and I mean I don't know, like I don't know, I don't want to be judgmental or anything, but like it didn't seem like something that men or age would do, right? Like it felt weird, but they would always insisting in taking these photos with me, and it felt like I was a big I don't know how to say it, but like it was like the photo was about me, like They were more interested in photographing me than them having a token of to remember that moment. Like it was about taking a picture of me. And I don't know, it felt weird, like because I'm not a celebrity. I'm not, why I didn't understand it. And it was so weird that at some point they started kind of arguing about who would get to take the picture that week. So it became kind of a thing, like they would do things like, no, you took it last week, it's my turn, like things like that, right? And at some point they came up with a system of order, like this week it's your turn to take the photo, and then next week you take the like they were like taking turns on taking the photo. So yeah, but now like, with this understanding that I gained because of the Rodolfo Vargas situation, I understand, right? Is that this network gamified those photos? I mean, because those photos, and like I don't know exactly what is the mechanism, right? I see two possibilities. Maybe there are more. One is that there is a direct reward for taking the photo. Like, if you take the photo, you get clipped, right? Like if you take a photo with the target, you get a payment. So kind of a monetary incentive, right? The other one is that there's a ranking system, like a point system, and if you accumulate more points, you achieve a higher level, and then you get paid more, you get promoted, something like that, right? Like kind of a reward system, right? For taking photos with the target. But this is because it's because of the metadata, right? It's because when they take the photo with the phone, in the metadata of the photo is encoded the GPS location, which is tied to the house of the agent, right? Or to the phone of the agent, or the identity of the agent. I don't know, right? And then the agent that takes the photo, gets attributed that trust increase, right? For being in proximity of the target. Um, this also helped me understand why is that it's important that Reynaldo Medina takes photos of everybody in December. This is to keep the database up to date, right? Because this database, uh, how do you say that? Depends or relies on facial features, and facial features change over time. Like, people could dye their hair, they could change the color of their hair, they could change their haircut, they could gain weight, they could lose weight, whatever, right? They need these photos to be up to date so they can be recognizable by the computer vision systems of the Chinese. So that's why they have these, continuous pipeline of taking photos with Ronaldo Medina and other photographers. It's a continuous thing. Like, he takes photos, something like to everybody in Katy, basically, twice a year, something like that, right? Like in December, for sure. And then there's something like but for July. Like there's another season in which he does a lot of photos. Um, it's because of that, because they need to keep the database up to date. So the Chinese don't miss a beat, basically. Um, but that thing of taking photos with the target is because I imagine, right, it's gamified in some way, and gives them either a trust score or something, right? That they, because they were like almost fighting for who would get to take the photo, right? Like they didn't want to appear. I mean, they were more interested in who would take the photo than who would appear in the photo, right? Which is odd. Anyhow, and these were basically Francisco Castillo, Daniel Parras, and Marcos Castillo. Uh, yes. Yeah, so this page is basically a directory, right, as well. A directory in the sense of that I described, in the same sense that I described in that patent that I showed you before. I think that is from 2016, so 10 years ago was that patent granted. The other thing that I could understand from this is the 10 counter that I described in one of the demos like 6 months ago. I'm not going to repeat everything I said, but basically, if I talk about a prominent agent in one of these declarations, the next day or the next time I go out, that agent will come and pass next to me, pointing his phone or her phone towards me, or pointing towards me with a car, which has a camera right behind the rear view mirror in the Chinese espionage machine. This is the same. It's because that photo takes a snapshot of me, and it has the GPS location in the metadata, which matches the GPS location of the agent. and both things get ingested into this pipeline, this indexing pipeline that they have, and in this bizarro index that they have, then basically the agent, they can increase the 10 counter. So basically, it's a visual verification. It's not something that happens manual. Like I have to be recognized by the computer vision system. Like it needs to be validated that it's me, that the agent intercepted in the context of increasing the 10 counter, and only then the counter is increased. It's a security measure, right? So this is how nobody can really mess with the counter, because it requires that me personally is in physical proximity of the agent, and that my likeliness is verified by the computer vision system. You see, so it's a high security system, because they need to know with high accuracy uh, the level of liability, right? Like how many times that agent has been mentioned by Ronaldo Aguirre, as an example, right? Or by such and such. So they need to be keeping counts of all these, dangerous mentions, to understand which are the agents that they need to remove or move or hide or whatever, right? To quarantine, whatever measure they need to take. So basically what I'm telling you is that they are basically, this suggests to me very pretty strongly that they're using Google's infrastructure for the 10 counter of the FSB and the Chinese, uh, directly, right? Which is, if you think about it, it's a pretty serious situation. Um, let's see. Yes. So then, thinking about this contact information thing, right? Contact directory, like the pattern, the fingerprinting with the contacts and all that. This got me thinking. There's something I haven't told you, uh, and I don't know if it would be, worth it to like show you the examples, because I mean, they're meaningful to me because I know the names, but I think I will rather just give you a description of what it is, right? Um, so when I was going out with Penelope, uh, I thought that, I mean, at the beginning, she supposedly lived in an apartment complex. But then, after the theft of the Calculado Health company, the technology that I created to compete with Careo and WebMD, basically, they stole that. And when they stole that, they extracted Penelope. Like, we broke up. Like, she created a situation, and we split up. And then, like 6 months later, she contacted me again. But when she contacted me again, she tells me that she moved from that apartment to a house. And she gave me a story that it's a house that she's renting from a lady who lives in Austin or something like that, or in Dallas, I can't recall. And she gave me a backstory, right? But she's renting that house. But she doesn't know anybody, supposedly, right? That's what she told me. She doesn't know anybody in that neighborhood. And this was maybe 2020. So I'm talking about 6 years ago. Fast forward to 2024, the database is leaked. I reverse engineered the how to decode it and all that. I start developing technology eventually through the use of technology, a combination of the uses of technology and information from the Venezuelan informant. I figured out that area where she lives, I mean, the immediate vicinity of her house, like 2 houses down and the houses on the back, is full with people that I know personally. So it is not true that she doesn't know anybody there. Like basically, the setup is that they live like in small communes. I don't know if commune would be a good word. Maybe it doesn't translate in English, but it's probably a bad translation. Doesn't mean that they share everything, but what it means is that they live in a very uh, tight knit uh, community, right? In the houses, I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea to show you not the names, but like to show you the proximity of the houses. Right? Let me go there. So she is at 3210 Scott Island, Scott Island, Katy. Right. So for example, well, you see the ones that say recently viewed. These are people. These are houses of people that I know and that live next to her. And now I didn't know that they live there. I mean, that these houses are registered under aliases. Like these are not the real names of my friends. I mean, these are people that I know from my childhood. They happen to live next to her, but under assumed aliases, right? Um, and you see the proximity. Like for example, this one, the 29715, is Francisco Castillo. I met Francisco when I was 5 years old. Imagine that, right? And he happens to live 3 houses down from her. Of course, he never told me that he lived there. Like it was a mystery to me where he really lived. Like he never really showed me the house or anything. But that's where he lives, right? Mansour, who is a long-time romantic interest of Penelope, lives in the 3202, I think it is, Somac Drive, right? Like basically in the street on the back. Alvin Cantero Mina, who is basically the boyfriend of Penelope, lives next door to her. So you see, they all live very close by. But of course, the target doesn't know that, right? So the target thinks that she's living there and she has neighbors as everybody else. But the target doesn't understand that the neighbors are really the target's friends, quote unquote, because at this point, I mean, they're living there because they are working for the network. They're working against the target, but the target doesn't know that, right? So imagine if I went to the cards game, right, on a Wednesday, I would meet Francisco there, and whatever I said to Francisco, then when he comes back, he passes it to the others, right? Like, it's a very close ecosystem, um, and they all, I might, right? I mean, the informant told me this, that part of the dynamics here is that they all watch the others. Like it's kind of the Cuban system, right? Like they all are they keep in line, all of them, because they know that the others are watching them, right? So if this assures that nobody deserts, basically, that nobody, you know, that nobody breaks rank, because they know that the others are watching, right? And they all know each other for decades, right? Um, but anyhow, the reason I'm telling you all this is because when I look at the sorry. Hi. Yeah, sorry about that. I was recording I mean the segment, and my browser froze. And I don't know how it's gonna end up, the continuity of it. But I was basically telling you that when I was looking at the setup in the neighborhood of where Penelope lives, it turns out that she's surrounded or in close proximity of many people that I know from my childhood, that are really working for the network, right? Are working with her, but I didn't know they lived there. And she of course, knows them, right? Like, and their houses are connected uh, by the fences, like and this is a TTP of this network. Like they remove the planks and they turn them into kind of doors that don't look like doors, but they're like planks that they can remove and they can pass from one house to the next. And the informant confirmed all this. So but the thing that I wanted to tell you is not so much about that. Is that when I was looking at the registry, I was debugging this, right? Like who lives where and what were the names that were used to register their houses. I realized something is that the things that they picked I mean, the fake names, the aliases that they used to register the houses, encode meaning. It's the same thing as the categories in the Reinaldo Medina photography. So, for example, for Penelope's house, to give you just an example, but this repeats everywhere in all the houses. Like so, but let me give you a couple of examples. In the house of Penelope, they picked the name Norma Erasmo, or some variation of Erasmo, Eramo, or Erasmo, or something like that. That comes from Norma being the mother of Gloria Espina, supposedly, right? So the identity of the alias of Gloria Espina has a mother that supposedly is called Norma Nariñez. Right? So that is why the Norma is there. So that is signifying that it's a romantic interest. And the other, and so the last name, Erasmo, is the first name of the father of Rosana Nunez, who is a long-time romantic interest that I had in high school. And the name of the father is Erasmo. So so they pick the names of two parents of two romantic interests to mark the house of Penelope, to register the house where Penelope lives. Right. So this tells the system that this is a romantic interest, and because of the names that they pick, the only possible target is me in this area. Right? So this has to be a romantic interest of Ronaldo again. For example, the House of Francisco, they pick two names that are related to friends from Campo Verde, that neighborhood where I grew up when I was a kid. Uh, and Francisco, I met him in that context. Right? So that is marking the context in which Francisco and I are related. And the same happens with the other houses. So what I'm telling you is that the names that they pick in the registrations have a meaning, like that is contextual to the target. So this tells me that they are scoring the registrations with the same, I mean, they're indexing them into the same Google-like index, in the Bizarro index, the Bizarro version of the Google index that they have. Right? So they're indexing them there in sections like work, romantic, in those sections, they are indexing those names. And so that means that they're scoring the houses with Google, right? With the Google Muppet score. That's what they're doing. And that's why my system works so well, because I built something pretty similar. Because I used to work for Google. I mean, it's the same mindset, right? Um, but this led me to think something that is explosive. How do they know the names, for example, of the father of Rosana Nunez? I mean, this is something super hard because, I mean, Rosana Nunez wasn't even my girlfriend. Like, it was one of those situations where, I wish she had been my girlfriend, but was going out with a friend of mine. So, there's a component of human intelligence, right? Like somebody I imagine of the group of my high school friends gave this information to the seven. Right? It's the only way, because this is at that time Facebook didn't exist. So this is only known by people that went to high school in that time with me. Right? So there is a small component of human intelligence for sure. But even so, this is so systematized, right? They've repeated the same process with names of people that I met 30 years ago, and are not first degree connections, are second degree connections, meaning, the father of Rosana Nunez, the father of somebody else. Uh, so, I started thinking, to give an idea, I don't even have the phone number of Rosana Nunez in my phone. I don't have it. So how do they know this? When I started looking at this, right, I looked at a few possibilities. The only possible thing that I think it is Facebook. They're getting this data from the Facebook social graph. So this means that they're basically mixing human intelligence, right, a little bit of it, to understand that Rosana Nunez was a romantic interest, but that's all they need. After that, they get the graph from Facebook and they see who's the father, right? And then Erasmo, and they take that name and register the house. And of course, they index this in the moped. But you see, it's explosive because it means that they're mixing the technologies of two separate huge technology companies to do this, right? They're mixing the social graph of Meta with the scoring technology of Google to attack everybody else. Right? Put that in perspective. Um, yeah, it's crazy. Right? Um, Yeah, I cannot think of any other way in which they could be doing this. Now, I have to tell you, there's something also interesting here. Around the time that Penelope registered that house, or where she moved to that house, around that time, Rosana Nunez contacted me on WhatsApp. I haven't heard from Rosana Nunez in probably 20 years, or I don't know, yeah, 15 years, something like that. I didn't know where she was in the world. She's in Spain, I think. But she, out of the blue, contacted me, and we started chatting, and how are you, and catching up. Uh, this is, of course, anecdotal, observational, and it's just a theory. But looking at this and the timing of that interaction on WhatsApp, because it was a series of messages, right? It occurred to me that maybe it's the same thing. It's a way to increase a relevance counter. Maybe they had her contact me, so my counter of communications in WhatsApp with her increased, which would increase the score. Imagine that the names have a score, right? Like because not all romantic relationships are the same. Like you could go out on a couple of dates with somebody, or you could be married to somebody for 20 years. So there's different degrees of importance in the relationships, in human relationships. So when they index the relationship in that index, they have to signify the level of the relationship in somehow, right? So I think my theory is that when they register the house of of that house, that Elias, that house where Penelope lives, they wanted to use a name that wasn't obvious, right? They didn't want to use Nelio, right? Or Peter, right? Because I could see it. They wanted to use something obscure. But the problem with something obscure is that the importance of the relationship would be low, and therefore the score contribution would be low. So what they did is that they had Rosana Nunez contact me and send me a bunch of messages over a period of a month, right? And but if that's I'm saying, and this is just a hint, I cannot prove it, right? But it was very coincidental on the timing. Yeah. But if this is the case, what this would suggest is that they're ingesting WhatsApp counters real time, right? Um, because there's another reason to do this, right? I mean, they could have taken a manual action, but that's the thing. Because they think like Google engineers. They don't want to take manual action. They want this to be automated. So the solution is, integrate the WhatsApp counters feed into this indexing. And, if you need to do something, ask the person to contact the target, right? And start a conversation, and then that will increase the counter. Instead of you taking a manual action to write something in the index. It's a Google way of thinking, right? I see it and I recognize it. Like that's probably what happened. So I'm offering you this as a hint. Cannot prove it. That maybe it was a coincidence. Right? We haven't talked in 15 years, and she happened to contact me when Penelope moved to that house. But maybe not. Right? But anyhow, I think what's happening is that they're using the Facebook social graph to assign these aliases. To register these houses to encode information about relationships. Like it's the same idea, the same design principle as with the photographer and the verticals, right? But this is more insidious because this is using second degree connections on family and friends relationships that you voluntarily give to Facebook, to Meta, right? And then they use that, they weaponize that. So I think that's probably what's happening. Another thing I wanted to tell you, I'm gonna shift topics a little bit. This is just a small thing, but it's something that I I think could be the case. I don't know. It's just a curiosity, right? But I hope somebody tells me one day if this is the case. Just for my own education. In the last segment, I mentioned briefly about that house that they have behind the Villa Sport. That is the jump point for this guy, Andres Salvador Mendes. Now, maybe I should show you. Yeah, let me share my screen with you one second. Okay. What is this called? Yeah, Villa Sport. Okay. So yeah, so this is the Villa Sport, and this is the house in question, right? The 25707 Bank Sprints Court. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that this road, which is called Greenbush Road, has been under construction for like 6 months. And this happened to coincide when things started escalating heavily, right? And the construction is set up in a way that this is a road that was wide, but the construction, for some reason, turned this into a single lane road, only one way. So you can only travel in this road today. And this road was important to me because it allowed me to go to Lake Pond Estates, but like to go from Lake Pond Estates to Valley Side Drive very quickly, right? But this road was modified in this way because of the construction, and now it's only one lane and only one way. You can only come. It would be basically from the north east to the southwest. Right, that's the only direction in which you can travel. The question I have, it's an open question. I don't know if this is the case, but it occurs to me that maybe it's just a way to block traffic. Like for example, if Andres Salvador Mendez is going to pass on the green area, what they do is that they put a machine in the middle, right? Saying, something, like some excuse to block the traffic at some point, like a mile before this point, right? To make sure that no car from the FBI or from nobody can pass there and photograph, what's his name? Andres Salvador Mendez walking to the Villa Sport. It could be a way to control the traffic, right? Because now it's only one road, one lane, and it's only one way. So what they can do, right? They playing with the timing of these lights that are on the other corner, they can basically block the entire traffic of that segment for 5 minutes, no problem, right? And that way they make sure that nobody comes in, nobody comes out, right? As if they were moving a president, basically, like the same idea. Um, to make sure that this critical moment doesn't get recorded by anybody. Well, I mean, I'm guessing, right? That's what they're doing. Um, so yeah, I don't know, but I don't know, right? Because it seems like a simple construction job. Why is this taking 6 months, right? And the road is blocked in this way. That doesn't really. Anyhow, it seems odd. Um, yes, let me see my notes. Yes, so this note about the calibration is what I was telling you about, why Reynaldo Medina and similar photographers have to be constantly taking photos all year, right? To keep the database up to date. The comment about Rosana Finol being there I already told you about that. Yes, so this is another thing I thought about. It's kind of an open question as well. Is in the previous segment we talked about how the Chinese figured out that they could reboot my cameras because the house is wired in a way that closet is wired directed to center point directly, and they can just lower the voltage of my house from center point. And I started thinking out loud about who would have the wiring diagrams of this house, and I came to a list of Phil Denning, the wife of Larry Ryan, and by extension, Larry Ryan, and um, um, there was somebody else. Mm, I can't recall. But anyhow, the question for this, the open question is whether that could be a TTP. I mean, that the person, because, to give you context, the wife of Larry Ryan is the chair of the architectural review committee. And to install the generator, I imagine somebody submitted to that committee the wiring diagrams and the plans of what was going to be done to the house. Right? So the committee approved it. But it happens to be the case that her husband, so Larry Ryan, is the CEO, I think, of a company, a small utility companies that control a lot of utilities in the area, including this one. So the question that came into my mind is whether this could be a TTP, that the person that the TTP would be, that the person that sits or is the chair on the architectural review committee of a prominent neighborhood happens to be married to a person that controls utilities. This could be important because it could be a way to pass the plans and the wiring diagrams and all that in situations like this, right? So Larry Ryan could have them because they would be in his house. He could take a photo of them, right? And this could be needed, for example, to harm a target if needed. So could be a TTP. I mean, it seems like a very convenient coincidence that the person that would have access to the wiring plans is married to a person that can actually use them to harm me. Right? So it made me wonder if this could be something standardized, and it could be probably easy to find. Right? So that's why I mentioned it. And the other thing I wanted to mention, another open question, right? So in the last segment, I was mentioning as well how I ablated the rear view mirror, so it could not communicate, sending the ping that they used to track them, right? And after that, they are having a huge, tremendous trouble. It's obvious, right, that they cannot keep up. Right? Now it looks like they're scrambling, like it's a sloppy, right? It's obvious what they're doing. Uh, and but I said when I said that when I said that I discovered that it was a rear view mirror where they had the beacon. I said something like, I have some questions, but I didn't really get into it. But these are the questions that I have. Is that so? Assume for a second, right, that the rear view mirror is the beacon sending this ping, this low energy, um, ping that's very short range. If that's the case, it's obvious that this has to be transmitted to the distributed system, like the weaponized Uber, basically, almost real time, because the speed is needed for the coordination to work. Like if I pass on a corner and suppose, right, that it takes 5 minutes for them to transmit the data, it would be too late. I could be a mile away at that point, right? It's useless. This is something that has to happen quickly. And I was thinking of this because, when they handle in their communications, when they handle things that are sensitive, they tend to prefer, the data being transported physically by an agent using a phone or a car, right? Like not the public internet. But this would be slow, because if I pass on a corner, then they would have to wait until somebody comes and pick up that information and then take it somewhere else. So by that point, I would be long gone. So that doesn't work. So this has to be real time. So my question was, well, is that they're incurring into the risk of transmitting the data directly from the car that is getting the ping. So imagine that they have a car parked in a corner, and that car sees my rearview mirror sending the beacon. Is that car has an internet connection over cellular or whatever that sends the information directly? I think that would be risky, right? The NSA could see that easily. So I think it occurred to me that maybe what they're doing is that they're using, so not all the houses have these capabilities of listening to the beacon and transmitting. I think it's the houses that have the satellite antennas, some of them, right? So what they're doing is that, some of these houses have this capability of listening to the beacon, and when they see it, the ones that have the satellite antenna transmit that information over the satellite link immediately, no delay. This would work well because the satellite is pretty secure, particularly the uplink. The only way to intercept it is flying a plane in the path of the antenna at the exact moment of the transmission. So it's very hard. Um, so I think that's probably what they're doing now. In terms of the antennas, I have to tell you, and I mentioned this before, right? That there's different setups that they have here, but they're one setup, and I'm just saying this so authorities can narrow it down, right? You don't have to look at all the antennas, all the houses. There's a lot of ways to narrow this down. So there's basically two groups, right? So there's one group in which, if you think of the roof of the house, I'm going to do this with my hands, and I'm sorry for doing this with my hands, but so imagine that you have the roof of a house, right? So there's some antennas that are pointing to the roof. These are mostly downlinks because what they're doing is the radio frequency signal hits the roof, reflects, and then hits the antenna. I mean the feed horn device. So it's like an extension to the dish, basically the roof. That's why. But this is a downlink, so this is not the one you're looking for. You're looking for the ones where the dish, the back of the dish, is towards the roof. So basically, the feed horn is pointing to the sky directly without obstruction. Those are the links. Those are the ones that you need to concentrate on. And that have cars parked outside because the cars are the ones that are listening for the beacon because the beacon is very low energy. The heart could be 50 feet away. So basically, the car is a gateway. The one that listens to the beacon is the car. And then I imagine after the car sees that I'm a few feet away, the car transmits directionally to the house. And then the house beams up to the satellite. Um, now, because of the sensitivity of this, right? Because they're in this conflict, if they get caught tracking me, it's going to be a big problem. Right? So I imagine they're doing this in a way that looks legit, probably using legit dish or DirecTV dishes, right? So I would narrow it down by that, like the legit companies that are not internet companies necessarily. So it doesn't look like this is internet traffic. And I imagine what they're doing is that they are transmitting the beacon on a control character. Meaning, like they don't really have to send, structured information. All they have to send is a character that is pre-agreed that it means this is Rinaldo, right? This is this target that we're tracking. When they want to track a specific target, in a very covert manner, they can agree. I mean, by software, right? That they're gonna send a control character. They just need to send a character, 1 byte, right? A control character, really. I mean, I would do that, right? And then they don't even need to send the location, and that's what I wanted to tell you. Because in the case of DirecTV and the I don't know what you call that, the set-top box, I think it's called, right? The device itself. When you activate the service of DirecTV, for example, the service is tied to your address. So DirecTV knows that this satellite antenna is located at for example, 2310 Britton Ridge Drive, an example, right? So they already have the GPS location. I mean, DirecTV already have the GPS location of the antenna. So the location doesn't need to even be transmitted. All they need to transmit is one character that says he's here, right? That's it. And this is, deniable. Like, how can you prove that but I guess, right, one way could be see correlation with the location of my car, right? Like if you see that I'm passing on a particular corner and that DirecTV or the subscriber is sending a control character, and look if this pattern repeats, when I pass next to these houses that have these characteristics that I'm describing. Meaning the car is outside, there's a car outside, and they have a dish or DirecTV satellite antenna that is pointing with the back facing the roof. If this is a pattern that repeats, this is what they're doing. So it could be still detectable. Yes. And this would explain why. Because this is a question I always had in my mind. Like, when for example, in one occasion, I sent an email to Phil Denning complaining about the military grade antennas in Lake Pone States. And he replied saying something like, something obviously crafted by a lawyer, right? Like, oh, we looked at it. He said something like, we looked at the FCC regulations and we decided that they're okay like this. Yeah, please. But he removed his antenna after that day. And the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive also removed the antenna the next day. And I have video recordings of them removing the antenna. They had an antenna next to the fence, but they took it apart the next day after I sent that email. But you see, in other cases, if I report somebody to the OFAC that has an antenna like this, they don't remove it. And I think it is because they need it. Like, the antennas is what's tracking the location, especially close to my home. Because, this is network theory. Like, if you want to track somebody like this, you have to track them and we talked about this before, right? You have to track them as early as you can. The more time you wait to start tracking, the more possibilities that person can take a path that you cannot cover. The probabilities increases for that the person could escape. So you need to track them from the moment they leave the door, if you can. So this is the reason why they don't remove the antennas, even if they see risk, because they would lose an important leg that would then let me be without surveillance, and they can't allow that to happen, given the situation, right? That the authoritarian regimes are, they see risk, right? So anyhow, I think, yeah. So I think these are the things that I wanted to cover on this one. So I thank you again for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Good day, dear friends from Blue Lava and Evolution Health Group. We prepared this short video to illustrate some of the features of the data export we prepared for you with the top KOLs for ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. First and foremost, please accept our apologies for the delay in delivering this data to you. The team at Key Opinion Leaders has been working around the clock for the last 2 weeks to get out a release of a new version of our stack. The release went out last night. Your data is based on the new stack. The precision looks amazing, according to our KPIs. Let's quickly go over the features of the dashboard. This dashboard has 2 pages. The navigation is on the left of the screen. The first page is a bird's eye view of the landscape. You can filter by name and concept on the upper part of the report. We also added filters for secondary and tertiary concepts right below. As you apply filters, all the widgets refresh to reflect the metrics of the KOLs and data points that satisfy the conditions specified on the filters. Scrolling down, you will see the ranking of the KOLs by 2 different algorithms: reach and influence. We have included a link to a video that explains the differences between the 2 algos. Now, let's go to the details page. Here, you need to filter by 1 KOL at a time using the only filter in the report. Once you restrict this view to a single KOL, you will be able to see their combined influence for all concepts they have influence for. Their trust score. This is a proprietary number we compute that is a proxy for trustworthiness. It's unbounded. Followers, another proprietary metric that is a proxy for reach. How many peers this KOL effectively reaches. Following, a proprietary metric that goes in the opposite direction. You can see the information about the KOL, reverse chronological affiliations, a proxy for their resume, most influential publications ranked by influence, the same algorithms we use to rank people. And here at the bottom, the most important metric, the influence scores for all concepts they have influence for, and their worldwide rank for that concept. With these scores, you can compare KOLs, apples to apples, for any criteria. We thank you again for your business, and we look forward to assisting you with your next project. We promise the next list will be delivered within 24 hours. Again, sorry for the delay on this one. Sincerely, the Key Opinion Leaders team.